Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku became Red Hood and fell for Fuyumi? Part 1. This story is Killer or Hero by Thicky67. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. Narrator Pav. Izuku was humming as he was walking down the street with a grocery bag in his hand as he typed on his phone with the other. He had gone to the store to get some ingredients for candy apples for Eri. It had been a month since he had saved her and now was trying his hardest to be the big brother she saw in him. As he was walking, he bumped into someone, making him drop his phone and bag. Izuku. Oh my bad, sore. Izuku didn't get to finish as a turquoise light filled the empty sidewalk before just leaving the hooded figure by himself. The hooded man started to whistle as he casually continued his walk like nothing happened. A grin could be seen under the hood as the man twirled a glowing marble in his palm. The phone on the pavement started ringing with a phone ID showing the name Uraraka, however, no one was there to answer it. The man, now revealed to be Mr. Compress, walked into some abandoned building stank with mold and God knows what else. Soon he reached a corner room with bars like an old jail cell. He tossed the marble into the cell as he walked into the small dark dirty cell as well. The marble deformed in a burst of light, dropping Izuku onto the ground with a thud. Before he could even react to his new surroundings, a giant club that looked like a magnet dropped on his head with a crunch, knocking him out. Out of the shadows came Magna, who had a neutral look, followed by the rest of the league, all with varying expressions but mostly confused. Dabi. So care to explain, Scratchy, why we kidnapped a student randomly? Toga. Can I stab him? Spinner. I agree with Dabi. Why are we kidnapping the student that Stain respects? Magna. No good in questioning it now. Shiggy scratched his neck as he smiled dangerously at the unconscious form of Izuku. Shiggy. Simple really. Master is interested in the boy, and most importantly he just pisses me off. Tie him to the chair. Spinner reluctantly complied, tying quirk suppressors onto Izuku as he zip-tied him into the chair. Shiggy. Now let's wake him up. We got to get him ready for tomorrow's event. Shiggy took a knife from Toga and stabbed it into Izuku's knee, making him startle awake and scream in pain. Which just caused Shiggy's grin to grow larger. Class 1A was growing restless as the hours passed since Izuku left to go to the store. At first, they chalked it up as Izuku getting distracted or he was helping someone out. But after several missed calls and the sun shrinking beneath the horizon, they finally grew worried. Momo created a tracker to find Izuku's phone. They called the police and UA once they found his phone in a gutter along with the groceries he bought. The missing report for Izuku went out. Uraraka stared at the floor with clear worry, with the majority of the class also in the as well commons with the same looks. No one had said a word for the past hour as they just sat around. Even Bakugo was uncharacteristically quiet as he leaned against a wall with a thoughtful look. Mina was sitting next to Uraraka, just staring at her friend with worry. Mina. Don't worry, we'll find him. Ochako. Right. Uraraka tried to remain positive, but she still couldn't help but be filled with worry. However, all they could do was wait. The next day changed everything for both Japan and this timeline at large. The nexus that would truly take this timeline into something new. At exactly 12 p.m. all TV channels in all of Japan were hijacked. Live streaming something that would scar Japan deeply. The channels distorted before falling on Shiggy's face, who was messing with the camera. All were confused as they looked at the villain so focused on the camera, before finally growing satisfied with the angle. He stepped back, giving the camera some awkward finger guns. Shiggy. Good, it's working. Now the people of Japan, get ready to witness the fall of a hero. For the embodiment of a hero to be shattered right in front of your eyes. Shiggy took a step to the side, allowing the camera to see a beaten and bloody Izuku strapped to a chair. Most people let out gasps of shock seeing the boy so beaten. The ones that knew the boy could already feel tears starting to seep out. Izuku's head was tilted down since he was unconscious from his wounds. Shiggy started talking while circling Izuku. Shiggy. This is Izuku Midoriya, a first year at UA High School in the hero course. A blessed child with an amazing quirk, someone that didn't struggle once in their sheltered life. Described to have a heart of gold and was pure as a cinnamon roll. Now I'm going to break it to show how weak this society is. As Shigi said that, he swung a metal pipe down on Izuku's thigh, making a loud crack filled the room, followed by Izuku's screams of pain. This signaled the beginning of Izuku's hour-long torture. Most of the league took a whack at Izuku. Dabi just burned a little since he really didn't care, since it didn't affect Endeavor. Spinner outright refused. Mr. Compress also refused, saying torture wasn't his style. Magna just stood guard. Kurogiri did whatever Shigi told him to do. Toga took great pleasure when it was her turn, and Shigi, well, he was the main torturer, constantly using any tool he could find. Class 1A couldn't take their eyes off the screen as they watched their friend getting tortured mercilessly. All were in a different state of shock at what they were watching, each scarring their mind forever. The heroes were trying their hardest to find Izuku, but they couldn't triangulate where Izuku was. Soon Shigi stopped with a pant, letting the camera feast its eyes on a broken, barely alive Izuku. Shigi then took out a green syringe and stabbed it into Izuku's neck, pouring the contents into him. Soon Izuku's injuries painfully started to heal themselves. Shigi. Well, that's all we have for today. See you same time tomorrow. Then the live stream ended, leaving the world in a state of shock. Shigi wasn't lying when he said they'll be back tomorrow. The very next day at the exact same time they started the stream again and began the session again and again. For 2 long weeks, Izuku was tortured live in front of all of Japan, not even being able to die, as Shigi constantly injected him with the green healing fluid, keeping Izuku alive and healed enough for the next day. By the end of the first week, Izuku didn't even make a sound anymore as he got tortured. Today was no different, as Izuku was hanged from the roof of the cell by his hands as Shigi wailed on him with a crowbar. They didn't even bother putting the quirk dampeners on Izuku, as he was far too weakened and tired to even use it anymore. Shigi was satisfied with the tired expression on Izuku's face, pressing a button that dropped Izuku to the ground with a thump. Shigi then picked up the camera and kicked Izuku onto his back, aiming it at the tired boy. Shigi. So Deku, do you have anything you want to say to your adoring fans? Maybe a thank you to them for saving you. Shigi grew a mad grin as Izuku looked up with a tired, defeated look, until a small but tired smile grew on Izuku's face. Shigaraki was confused until Izuku spoke with a gentle, tired voice as he looked right into Shigaraki's face. Izuku. Go fuck yourself. Izuku spat at Shigi's face, making blood go all over him, causing Izuku to chuckle up blood. Shigi fell into a rage, whacking Izuku constantly with the crowbar, making sickening cracks fill the room, but Izuku didn't let it get to him as he just continued to smile at Shigi. As Shigi was about to whack him again, Spinner rushed into the room with a panicked look. Spinner. Shigaraki. The heroes found us, we need to get out of here. Shigi was about to kill Izuku with a touch of his hand out of panic until a thought came to his mind. Izuku had already prepared for his death and was confused as Shigi smiled as he pulled out his phone, pressing a button. Shigi. Fine, we're leaving, but the heroes will get a present to find. Shigi and Spinner then left the room without saying a word. Izuku laid there for a second, catching his wheezing breaths before starting to crawl towards the open door. He felt his heart drop even lower as he saw the whole hallway lined with C4. He then heard the beeping, finally making him turn to see the main bomb in his cell. He was beaten so badly he couldn't even hear the beeping before or saw them bring it in. His eyes softened as he realized this was truly it, as the bomb was already at a minute. He leaned against the door frame and plopped against the wall in a sitting pose. He then saw the camera and smiled as he picked up like a makeshift vlog. If he was going to die, then he'll at least make sure Shigaraki doesn't gain anything from it. So, he began his last words. Izuku. It's okay everyone, I don't blame anyone for this. I don't blame the heroes for taking so long. Remember, they are humans and make mistakes as well. I've already accepted that I'm most likely going to die, and I'm okay with that. Don't lose hope in our heroes just because I'll die today. Remember, without heroes this world would fall into chaos with these bastards as the ones in charge. Mom, I'm sorry, but you'll be okay. All Might, I'm sorry I didn't get to keep our promise. Kachan, be the best like you always said you would be. Everyone else, it's okay, you know why? Because I know you'll be the best heroes this world has ever seen. Izuku dropped the camera to his side as he watched the bomb slowly tick down from 15 seconds. He closed his eyes as he readied for the end. All Might bounced off buildings at full speed with full panic on his face. As soon as he heard they had the location, he immediately went full speed toward the location. He landed hard, cracking the ground, and saw the apartment building where Izuku was. All Might started running full speed towards it, but before he could even get a second step in, it exploded in a massive fireball, knocking him back. He reached towards the explosion as he fell back. All Might. Izuku. It took 3 days to find Izuku's body, and as if it were fate, All Might was the one to find the mangled, burned corpse of Izuku. All Might gently picked up the corpse, ignoring the smell and blood, as he carried it to an ambulance with all the heroes and first responders that were helping looked on in sadness. As he was walking, he felt a jolt and looked down, seeing the red outlines go into him, signaling One for All had returned to its 8th user. All Might cried as he placed Izuku on the gurney. Inko was a mess. She was in her apartment on her couch with all the lights off, crying loudly as the TV in front of her showed Izuku's face and the headline saying "Body Finally Found." Class 1A wasn't feeling any better, as most were crying or trying to calm their classmates down, most failing. Bakugo was outside staring at the night sky while sitting on a bench under a lamppost. Izuku's last words played on a loop in his head, making him confused about what he was feeling. Izuku. Kachan, be the best like you always said you would be. Bakugo sighed as he leaned down with arms on his thighs. Drops of water started to hit the ground where Bakugo's face was looking, showing that Bakugo was crying lightly with frustration. Bakugo. I'm so sorry, Izuku. The funeral was private from the public, with the only attendants being Inko, the Bakugo family, Class 1A, UA staff, and Eri. Kota was invited but refused to go due to his grief. It didn't help their moods when this was the brightest and clearest day of the year, not hot or cold, it was just perfect. It felt so wrong to them, that it was a perfect day, and yet here they are burying someone they deeply cared about. After Izuku's grave was filled, Eri finally couldn't take it anymore and ran to his gravestone, hugging tightly while sobbing. You see, Eri blamed herself for what happened to Izuku, since the only reason why he got captured. Before anyone could get close to her, her quirk was haywire, with grief consuming the area. They turned to Aizawa, but he just shook his head as if saying just let her get it all out. Once a good minute passed, Aizawa turned Eri's quirk off, making her pass out. He gently walked over and picked her up while staring at his student's grave with a sad expression. Aizawa. Goodbye, problem child. Izuku would never get to know the effect his final words had on Japan. They had completely shattered Shigaraki's plan to stew chaos. If anything, it brought hope to the people, hope for the next generation. If they were anything like Izuku Midoriya, then they would be in good hands in the future. Nezu decided to have a statue added to UA for Izuku in a new mausoleum. It would be for him and any other UA student, past, present, or future, that lost their lives in the line of duty. Not even an hour after Izuku's body recovery, a nationwide manhunt was in for the League of Villains. Shigaraki screamed in pain as All for One repeating slammed him into the wall while electrocuting him. You see, Shigaraki never told All for One what he had done or even got his permission. So, once All for One learned what Shigaraki did, it's safe to say the supervillain was extremely angry. AFO. You dumb motherfucker, you had one job. Wait until I give you orders. But no, you just go off and ruin everything. All for One hit Shigaraki again, smashing his face into the wall repeatedly. AFO. Now it's gone forever. The quirk that was going to make me unstoppable. You know what, you don't deserve that quirk anymore. Shiggy. Wah. All for One slapped his hand onto Shiggy's head with red light glowing, signaling he was taking decay. AFO. Oh, I forgot you didn't know. You were the perfect opportunity to break All Might and plant a quirk in a young quirkless boy that was far too destructive for the lad. A quirk that would kill his own family at one outburst, then swoop up the kid and use him against All Might. So close to perfection as well, back to the drawing board, I guess. All for One then picked him up by the head and tossed him against the wall. AFO. Get the hell out of my sight and take those mid-tier villains as well, I have no use for you anymore. Don't bother trying to use any of my assets, they won't help you. Just like that, Shigaraki had lost everything the same way he took everything from Izuku, so, Shigaraki and his gang were sent out to the world to fend for themselves. Well, it's not like they stayed together that long anyway. As night came in, a thunderstorm did as well, a complete contrast to the whole day. Very fitting for the funeral early, but even more fitting now. Izuku's grave thumped with the thunder as the view slowly zoomed in on the muddy grave until a flash of lightning illuminated the night. The same moment a fist tore through the muddy grave. Narrator Pav. * 10 years later. It was a beautiful sunny morning on a Wednesday, the eve of New Year break. It was calm in the busy streets of downtown Tokyo as workers made their way to work, or children to school. Until a large explosion blew the entrance of a bank wide open. A figure jumped out of the smoke, landing on the street in a weird pose while holding 2 money bags. He had red spiky hair with tanned skin. He quickly bit his finger and splashed his blood to the ground, creating an orange explosion from his blood, launching himself into the air. The villain was cackling as he flew in the air until a glowing orange palm appeared in his face, revealing a very prominent hero. An explosion blasted off the hero's hand, launching the villain back to the ground and embedding them in the street unconscious. The hero landed down looking at the villain with a pissed look. Bakugo. Fucking poser. Civilian 1. Look, it's dynamite. The number 2 hero. Civilian 2. Damn, he's hot. 1. Civilian 3. You think he be number 1 by now? Bakugo growled as he tilted his head to look at the civilian that said that with a glare. Katsuki Bakugo aka Dynamite, age 26, quirk, explosive sweat, rank, number 2 hero. Bakugo became extremely motivated to make Izuku's last words true by constantly training and being the best. Though the current number 1 had been stopping that for a while now. Bakugo made the top 10 when he was 20, he's been number 2 for 4 years now. He's mellowed a lot compared to what he used to be, but he still has outbursts, which is the main reason he isn't number 1. Before Bakugo could do anything to the civilian, a man with split hair in dual colors landed next to him, putting a hand on Bakugo's shoulder. Bakugo looked back, meeting eyes with his former classmate, and scoffed as he pulled his shoulder forward to get the hand off him as he began to wrap handcuffs on the villain. However, the crowd didn't help with his annoyance. Civilian 6. Oh my god. It's Shoto. The number 3 hero. Civilian 2. Okay, he's hot. Civilian 4. Isn't he married? Shoto Todoroki. Age 25, quirk, half hot half cold, rank, number 3 hero. Shoto had a rough time after Izuku's death, seeing as his first true friend had been murdered. Shoto the more motivated to continue to be the best hero he could be and the best man as well. He is now a lovely husband and father. He made the top 10 when he was 23 and has been in the top 5 for 2 years. Shoto. Bakugo, you know what today is, right? Bakugo just glared at him as if Shoto had insulted him. Bakugo. Of course I know. I'll be there this time. Just leave me. Shoto just nodded as he flew off with his fire, leaving Bakugo there to wait for the police. He sighed as he rubbed his eyes. Today was gonna be rough after all, it was the anniversary today. 2 hours later, Bakugo, now in normal civilian clothes, stood outside a restaurant that Sato owned. You see, all of Class 1A not necessarily became ordinary heroes. Let's begin with the rankers. Number 2 Bakugo, number 3 Shoto, number 4 Tokiyami, number 7 Kirishima, and number 10 Ochako. The others fell into different categories of heroes as they believed they really weren't cut out for a normal hero. Mina, Denki, Jiro, and Toru, who learned to turn her quirk off, became celebrity heroes. Momo and Aoyama became influential heroes, with Momo in industry and Aoyama in fashion. Sato, like said before, owns several food industries, becoming a hero similar to Lunch Rush. The others withered, became specialized heroes for certain situations, like Suyu for Coast Guard stuff, or teachers at varying hero schools like Ojiro and Shoji. Yet they still all had one thing in common: the burning fire of determination that Izuku had lit in them all those years ago. To thank him for this, they would meet every year on the anniversary of his death without fail, not to mourn or grieve over what could have been, but to instead honor what he was and did. Except one. For the last 9 years, Bakugo had been the only one not to attend. Not because he hadn't changed, but because he had changed. The reason why Bakugo never showed up was because he believed he didn't deserve to be near something that appreciated someone that he never did. Someone he had pushed away all those years ago due to his own inferiority and ego. This year he finally decided, due to his therapist's persuasion, to actually go, to finally stitch that wound that's been bleeding for far too long. Bakugo sighed, saying a small prayer before entering the restaurant and finding most of the class already starting. They stopped as they saw Bakugo enter and then quickly welcomed him, glad that he finally turned around. They began the small celebration with a simple lunch, talking about their day and how they've been doing and sharing stories they've heard about Izuku they didn't know about or just heard about. Yet the topic that always bothered them even to 10 years now was when Izuku's body was stolen the day after he was buried. It took a week to find the body. Where they found it in someone's freezer, apparently some amateur grave robbers had taken it to make a pretty penny but instead got life in prison. It still made the class angry that their friend's grave was desecrated, though it did cause the grave to be moved to a more secure cemetery. Which is where the old class was standing right now. They all stood in a semicircle solemnly staring at the pristine grave of Izuku Midoriya. A white marble that stood there for over 10 years, constantly getting maintenanced by both private mourners and his old friends. Each member of Class 1A had a rose and each went forward to talk to Izuku for a brief moment, dropping their rose and letting the next person go. The last to go was Bakugo, who unlike the others knelt before the grave and uncharacteristically asked to be left alone for a second. The others kindly agreed, telling him they'll be at the entrance. Bakugo just knelt there looking at the grave with a soft expression, trying his hardest to keep his composure. He started with a somber tone. Bakugo. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I know I should have said this when you were still here. But I let my own ego and inferiority destroy what we had, hell, even before that I was still an ass. Yet, you still tried to keep it together even though I didn't deserve the time of day from you. You believed that I could be better. I'm really trying to be better, Izuku, but it's so hard to be something that you're not. I don't know what you saw in me, but I can't find Izuku. Every day your final words just play on repeat in my head every night. I don't think I can do it, Izuku. I'm not good enough. No, I don't deserve that #1 spot, not after everything I did to you. To my own best friend, I'm just so sorry, Izuku. Why can't I be better even after all these years? Bakugo collapsed to all fours before Izuku's grave as he broke down crying before it. He just cried his eyes out, letting out all of his guilt that will forever eat at his soul until he forgives himself. Bakugo sniffed and lifted himself up onto his knees with his hands on his thighs. With a teary, determined face, he stared at Izuku's grave. Bakugo. Yet that was your final wish. For me to be the best like I always bragged. Even though I don't deserve that honor, I'll do it for you. Goodbye, nerd. Bakugo stood up and rubbed his eyes as he made his way to the entrance where the rest of the class was waiting. As they exited the cemetery and entered the sidewalk where they were about to separate until a limousine crashed into a pole. A large man stepped out with a panicked face, which the more experienced heroes of them recognized as one of the main drug lords of Tokyo, Mr. Statue. The drug lord had a panicked look on his face as he spun around looking for something. He then started to grow bigger, turning into a golem-like monster at least 10 feet tall. It looks refined and structured, making him look like a walking statue with glowing purple eyes. The former Class 1A readied for a fight as the drug lord turned to them, yet his next words sowed confusion into their system. Mr. Statue. Don't just stand there, help me. A loud crackle like thunder echoed throughout the city as a bullet followed shortly after, blasting the drug lord's head into pieces of rock and blood, horrifying the heroes. Bakugo. Get down, sniper. Everyone quickly went behind cover, waiting for a second shot that would never come. A mile away on a rooftop, a man released the breath he was holding as cocked the bolt back on his anti-material rifle, releasing a barrel from it. The barrel was red and smoking from the powerful bullet he used. The figure of a man was wearing a red helmet that looked like a mix between a motorcycle helmet and mask. He wore dark grayish armor underneath that was form-fitting along with his pants. He wore bright red combat shoes with a brown leather jacket with a gray hood attached to it. The figure pulled out his phone, dialing a number real quick while going into a lunge pose, stretching out his legs. After a couple of seconds of ringing, someone answered the call. It's done. Caller. Your money will be wired shortly. The male voice hung up, making the red mask scoff. It better fucking be. To be sure, the contract killer looked at his phone, pulling out his bank account, refreshing it a couple of times before finally seeing the transaction of $2 million. The mercenary huffed in annoyance as he shouldered his heavy rifle and jumped off the roof of the building, using a grapple gun to lower his descent into a back alley where a red bike was waiting for him. he disassembled the gun into two and put it into a suitcase, latching it onto his back like a magnet. He hopped onto the bike, revving it to life, and drove into the morning traffic. The mercenary served through traffic for a few minutes before turning into an underground parking lot of a very high-end apartment complex that was easily one of the tallest buildings in the area. He went to an elevator in the parking lot, showing a coin to a detector, which opened the elevator, allowing the mercenary to enter. The elevator went down, leading to another underground garage, this one much nicer, with white pavement and walls with golden trimming at the edges. He parked his bike with his other cars and turned it off as he went into another elevator, this one for people. The attendant of the elevator just nodded at the mercenary before clicking the top floor. The mercenary pulled out his phone, messing with it as he waited a long amount of time to get to the 200th floor. It took 3 minutes. Once the elevator bell chimed, the mercenary tipped the attendant a fat wad of cash and walked down a luxurious hallway before turning at an apartment door, doing a hand scan on the lock and entering the apartment. The apartment was a nice mini penthouse with it opening to the kitchen, and a dining room embedded into the living room which connected to a balcony. Then there was a hall that led to a bathroom, his room, and 2 guest rooms. The mercenary sighed as he walked in, clicking off a holster on his hip, dropping it on a chair, revealing 2 guns in them. He tossed the guitar in a corner while he plopped on the couch, turning the TV with it being on the news, showing 1A being interviewed about his assassination. If you looked around the living room, you could the room littered with weapons, all messily placed around the room, along with several boxes of ammo or attachments. The mercenary shimmied off his leather jacket while on the couch, tossing to the opposite end. He then put his hands on his helmet, making a click from it, followed by air leaving it. The merc tossed his helmet onto the coffee table. The merc leaned back on the couch as he continued to watch the interviews while showing his face. Laying on that couch was a much older Izuku, who was now at an easy 6'1" with a lean muscular build. His hair was still the green messy curls on top, but the sides were a little trimmed down close to a fade, but not yet. His face had a few small scars with a 5 o'clock shadow around his jawline. His eyes were the still same forest green, which looked at the TV with zero emotion. He pulled up the guitar case, pulling out the rifle, and started disassembling it while listening to the TV. While doing this, his phone buzzed, signaling he got a message. He quickly picked it up and groaned when he saw the ID of "Bitch" had texted him. "Bitch, it's your month to watch her. Come pick her up at the Tokyo airport, private landing 5 at 8 a.m. tomorrow. See you there, love 4X. Izuku groaned in annoyance, already imagining her face, making very angry. However, his angry dissipated into a small smile as he will get to see her again. Still, he wasn't looking forward to seeing that woman again. As he was thinking over about tomorrow, his eyes drifted to his bookcase, with the noise from his TV drowning out as his eyes laid upon a certain journal's spine. Operation Puppet Master. Izuku shook his head, trying to forget about that. It wasn't time, not yet at least. Once he began that operation, there was no backing out after that. Izuku palmed his hands as he looked at Bakugo on TV with a frown. Izuku. Not the right moment. Narrator Pav. It was the next day, a beautiful morning for the city of Tokyo. In the center of this capital stood the Tower of Peace, the new headquarters of the Hero Association of Japan, along with the Safety Commission after the last HQ got destroyed in a villain attack. The tower was easily the tallest building in the supercity, allowing the heroes inside to have an entire view of the whole city. This morning was a very important meeting that will be held on the top floor. This meeting is among the top 10 for heroes and the president of the Safety Commission. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the recent string of high-profile murders, or more commonly called assassinations. The room was at the very top of the tower, consisting of the whole floor with a giant oval table in the middle with chairs. There were also 10 desks, which were the desks of the top 10, along with a lounge and game room. Those would be for later, as they had something more important to deal with it at the moment. The top 10 sat around the table, all looking at the arriving president with neutral expressions, already having an idea of what the meeting was about. The top 10 went as followed. 1. Mirio Tagata, Lemillion. Quirk. Permeation. The ability to turn his entire body intangible. 2. Katsuki Bakugo, Dynamite. Quirk. Explosive Sweat. Self-explanatory. 3. Shoto Todoroki. Quirk. Half hot, half cold. 4. Fumikage Tokiyami. Quirk. Dark Shadow. 5. Inasa Yoarashi, Gale Force. Quirk. Whirlwind. 6. Eijiro Kirishima, Red Riot. Quirk. Hardening. 7. Gunsmith, real name classified. Quirk. Arsenal. He can create any weapon that he has a complete understanding of both application and creation. They are formed in his hands and require both mental concentration and excess storage of iron in the body, as that is what is consumed to create these weapons. 8. Hawks. 9. Yui Kodai, Rule. Quirk. Size. 10. Ochako Uraraka, Uravity. Quirk. 0 Gravity. The top 10 looked to the president as she sat down at the head of the table with a professional face. She began the meeting by clicking a clicker, causing the middle of the table to glow as projection holograms floated above it in 15 photos of dead people in various poses. The heroes straightened up and grew frowns at the bodies. President. As most of you know, there has been a string of high-profile assassinations in this country. A few of you have witnessed them in person. The heroes in question nodded in confirmation as the pictures floated to each of them, giving them a better view of the crimes. President. 15 assassinations in total in the span of 2 weeks. All victims are high profile as stated before, meaning the assassin had to go through a lot to get these kills. 3 prominent heroes with shady behind-the-scenes business, 7 high-profile villains, mostly crime lords, and 5 corrupt politicians. Uravity. Are we certain it's the same assassin and not multiple? President. Positive. According to our mole in the underground, one singular assassin accepted the contracts and cashed in on them as well. However, more importantly, they were all contracted out by the 7 demon heads. The older heroes of the top 10 looked shocked by the declaration, while the younger of them were confused with the name. Red Riot. The 7 demon heads. What is that, President? The 7 demon heads is a world-class crime syndicate that has rooted itself in our worlds, well, everything. There are a total of 7 members with various names and purposes. Their identities are unknown, unfortunately, which leads us to our assassin. The president clicked her clicker, causing the crime images to switch to 7 question marks, all connected to a single image of a man in a red helmet. President. The Red Hood. Gunsmith and Rule both tensed at the name noticed by Dynamite, but he held his tongue. The president clicked her clicker again, causing several images of the Red Hood to appear in several images in various poses, ironically all of them of him pointing a gun at the camera. President. Gunsmith. I'll leave the explanation to you since you are more familiar with this man compared to me. Gunsmith. Of course, madam. Red Hood. Identity unknown. Age believed to be around 24 to 25 but not confirmed. Quirk. Unknown. Red Hood is a prominent mercenary in the underworld who appeared there around 8 years ago. Whether he went under a different alias before that is unknown. He was ruthless and uncaring in his work, taking any bounty or contract as long as they paid well. However, around 3 years ago he seemed to have mellowed in a sense, only taking certain contracts that either involved someone corrupt or a villain, unless the 7 demon heads asked him personally. Red Hood has completed about 5,000 or so completed missions. Dynamite. Now, may I interrupt Gunsmith? How do you know so much about this asshole? Gunsmith. Simple, Dynamite. A few years back when the Red Hood was last in the country, I tried to take him down and did a lot of research. However, this led to a confrontation with this man. This leads to the second set of information about him, the way he fights. He is very unorthodox but uses that to his advantage. He'll use anything, and I mean anything, to get the advantage over someone, be it physiological, physical, or environmental. He'll get you off your game and take advantage of it, and trust me, his fighting skill is no joke. I'm only alive today because he ran out of ammo and he didn't feel like getting his jacket dirty. Most of the top 10 shuddered at that, since it was common knowledge that Gunsmith was probably the best fighter out of all the heroes, and that even included back then. President. Which makes his capture all the more serious. One false step and your brains could be all over a wall. However, if we don't capture him, we will never get a better opportunity at the 7 demon heads. Gunsmith. He is a master tactician, a brilliant fighter with an emphasis on a brawler style. His marksmanship is unmatched, and his arsenal could even match me on my best day. We need to be very cautious and smart about this. President. Agreed. We will discuss this more on a separate date. You all are dismissed. Elsewhere. Tokyo, Japan International Airport. Izuku stood on a private runway far from prying eyes, waiting for the jet to arrive. He wore a black leather jacket with black fur at the collar, blue jeans with red basketball shoes, and sunglasses. He didn't bother covering his hair since that would just make him more suspicious. Plus it wasn't like he was hiding after all who would be looking for a dead man. Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts when a jet landed in front of him, causing the wind to pick up. Izuku scoffed at the sapphire-colored jet as it stopped in front of him. He put his hands in his jacket pocket as the cold wind continued to flow around him. Eventually, the jet fully stopped and turned off with the side door opening and dropping its staircase. Several men in black suits came out and made a perimeter before giving an all-clear to the agents in the plane. After a minute, a beautiful woman appeared at the exit of the plane with a beautiful white smile. Her hair was a golden blonde that was long and wavy, with it seeming to bounce with each step she took down the stairs. Her skin was white with a hint of a small caramel in it without a single blemish on her. Her face was perfect and natural with not an ounce of makeup, yet still looked like she could challenge a supermodel. She seemed to be American with a hint of Korean in her, but the most alluring thing about her was her blood-red eyes that seemed to glow with the light. Her outfit was a large white fur coat that barely covered her very curvaceous body that hugged a white satin dress. Her red lips smiled as she laid eyes upon Izuku and slowly made her way to him before stopping in front of him with sly smile, looking up at him with it. "Ya, Ijuku, Olinmanieo." Korean, "Hey, Izuku. Long time no see." Izuku. "Speak English, yai. I don't have the patience for your crap. Yai. Oh, you're no fun, baby. Come on, you used to love it when I screamed your name in Korean." Asterisk Yai Fang, head of influence of the 7 demon heads, age, 25. Quirk. Kitsune. Gives her the powers of a fox spirit from Japanese mythology. The more tails she summons, the stronger she becomes, but loses more of her humanity as well. She is the most famous person in the world that could even match All Might's popularity in his prime. She is a model, actress, entrepreneur, influencer, artist, and performer. Her influence and fame touch all forms of media, fashion, music, entertainment, and even news media. Her main role in the 7 demon heads is distraction. Whenever they plan something big, she creates something big to distract the public. Izuku. I also loved it when you were actually tolerable, but here we are now. Where is she? Yai frowned as she dropped her sultry tone and went into a professional voice. Yai. Ah yes, almost forgot about that. That made Izuku visibly angry, but Yai ignored it, snapping her fingers and causing one of the guards to radio on a talkie to bring the girl out. Yai turned to Izuku with a cold look that he unfortunately used to like. Yai. Before she gets out here, let's get down to business. You don't have to worry about visitations anymore, she's your problem now. Izuku. Huh, Yai. She brings no use to me nor the 7 demon heads. So, you can have her permanently. Izuku. Why? Izuku was furious as he asked. Yai. She's too much like you in all the wrong ways. We gave her leeway until she was 5, but nope, she's quirkless, just like you. So she's no use to us, and you know, she's a little slow. Izuku. That doesn't matter, you're her mother. Izuku snarled at her as he tried to keep his voice down, but Yai made no face that she noticed nor cared as she scrolled on her phone. Yai. And you are her father, so she'll be in fine hands. Before the two could continue to argue, the girl appeared at the top of the staircase, making Izuku smile and Yai too stare with disinterest. The girl was around 5 or 6 years of age with a messy set of wavy fluffy green hair, green emerald eyes, and 2 sets of diamond freckles on her cheeks. The girl was small for her age and was wearing a small hoodie with a froppy design, pink gravity headphones over her ears, and a QWERTY tablet. The girl quickly ran down the steps at a fast speed and collided with Izuku, hugging his leg and making him laugh as he knelt to return it. Yai. Well, I'll leave you to it. I got a meeting with someone important, so, see ya if I need another kid. Yai turned and went into a limo that quickly drove off, leaving Izuku and the small girl by themselves. The girl didn't even bother looking at her mother leaving, making Izuku angry, but he didn't voice it as he continued to hug the girl. Izuku. How about we get some burgers, Zumi? The girl, now named Zumi, just nodded as he led her to a black muscle car that wasn't too far away. Izuku Pav. Izuku Midoriya died 10 years ago. The same day he was buried was the day I was born. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes for the first time was darkness. The first feeling that came over me was fear and panic. The first thing I felt was pain as I desperately punched upward, breaking my hand on the wooden casket. When I finally tore through the wood and mud into the sky, rain and thunder were the only things to greet me. My first moments in this world were confusion and fear as I walked around a deserted street in a wet tuxedo with no idea where I was or who I was. I was found by the 7 Demon Head Lieutenant who took me to their leader. After that I was trained to become a weapon for them for 2 years. I didn't question them since they were the only people I knew, and since I knew them they must be trustworthy. That was the greatest mistake of my life. After 2 years of training, the Red Hood was finally brought into this world. I was sent out into the world as their weapon, their tool, their dog. Around 5 years ago I hooked up with Yai in what I thought at the time was a one-night stand, but in reality, it was a planned event. Not long after Zumi was born prematurely, they almost gave up on her immediately, but the leader decided to give her a chance to prove herself. Zumi developed 2 disabilities, a small case of mild autism. It doesn't affect anything but her sociability, which is doubled down by her ADD. So she is a really quiet kid and socially awkward. The demons didn't care, and to be fair, originally neither did I. Until 3 years ago, she had a fascination with heroes ever since she could understand her surroundings. One day she was watching videos on the computer while he was watching TV, not paying attention to the small child at the time. Until she asked one innocent question that changed me, or more appropriately brought Izuku back. "Can I be a hero like this guy, Daddy?" She asked me while holding up a video of an all too familiar symbol helping people. Everything collapsed in on me as the memories rocketed back into me. That day Izuku Midoriya forced his way into the Red Hood, trying to unite them. But I didn't allow that. Izuku Midoriya doesn't deserve to be stained with all the evil the Red Hood had caused. I'm just his vessel until he can finally move on. After that day I tried my best to be just like Izuku Midoriya, but I could never be that good. Red Hood and Izuku Midoriya are the same person, but the memory of Izuku who used to be still lingers in my mind. I could never live up to that memory, but I can right my wrongs by cleansing the streets of scum. Also to make sure nothing happens to her. To make sure nothing ever happens to her. Narrator Pav. It was the day after Izuku was given complete custody of his only daughter, Zumi Fang, or for now Zumi Shimura. Maybe one day she can use the Midoriya name, but for now she'll have to use the name of a different dead person. The birth of Zumi and her conception isn't that complicated, but isn't heartwarming either. As stated before, he had hooked up with her mother, not necessarily against his will if he was honest, but it wasn't something he was proud of either. It would be many years later that he learned it was planned from the beginning that she would bear his kin. Zumi, however, wasn't what the 7 demon heads had hoped for. Being born prematurely, she wasn't already looked down on with doubt even when she recovered pretty fast into a normal baby with some medicine from them. However, the next problem quickly appeared once she gained some cognition. She was diagnosed with a mild case of autism and ADD, which are extremely manageable and non-intrusive with proper adjustments. However, once it was learned that she was quirkless, Zumi was discarded by her mother. Izuku didn't mind his daughter's disabilities, well, at least not anymore. He truly does love his daughter, which is why he was going to send her to school, to hopefully get her out of her shell. Izuku huffed an exhausted sigh back as he looked at nearby elementary schools, especially better high-end ones. Zumi watched TV on the couch on her back upside down, making Izuku smile as she just zoned out watching an old cartoon. He had cleaned the apartment the night before he picked up Zumi, putting up his guns and many alcohol bottles that had littered the floor. He doesn't want Zumi to see that side of him. She was a smart kid, so he wouldn't be surprised if she knew what he did for a living, but he'll never let her see what he does with her own eyes. Izuku's eyes glanced back to his bookshelves, seeing the spine of the journal he had glanced at before. Operation Puppet Master. Izuku looked away, standing up while grabbing his keys as he had found a school. Izuku. Come on, Zumi. We need to run some errands. Zumi just nodded as she turned off the TV and rolled off the couch with ease from being upside down and into a standing position. Showing the early training she was put through by them, she slipped on her Uravity headphones and followed her father to the door where they both exited. Izuku just smiled as he lightly patted her messy green curls, making her smile. Izuku helped Zumi out of her car seat, gently placing her down before taking her hand into his. He turned around seeing a giant elementary school that wasn't too far from his apartment. It was an understatement to say it was giant. There were 10 buildings on the campus, each easily the size of small skyscrapers, each around 15 stories high. He also saw an entire area for athletics with so many fields for different sports that he couldn't count. Izuku. Damn, this is like a mini UA. Where the hell did they get all this money? Izuku was answered by a small plaque that was on the entrance gate. Founded in 2189, was renovated in 2233 by a large donation from Enji Todoroki, or commonly known as Endeavor. Izuku. Well, that answers that. Wonder why a pro hero would put so much money into an elementary school. Izuku soon reached the gate where a security point was located, and after being cleared by a guard, he and Zumi were allowed inside. After being taken to the main building, which Izuku assumed was the administration building, he was correct when they entered and were told by the secretary to wait in the waiting room for a tour guide to come by, who also was a teacher since they were still in summer break. As Zumi watched Izuku play on his phone, the door opened, making Izuku look up. A woman with white hair and red highlights on the end walked in. She had glasses on that covered her gray eyes and was beautiful in a nerdy type of way. She was wearing a black skirt that went to her knees, barely covering them, with black leggings underneath. Her upper half was in a white casual blouse. Izuku looked at her with suspicions on instinct but cooled down after psyching himself down. "Oh, you must be Shimura-san. My name is Fuyumi Todoroki. I'm the head teacher for the elementary students, but I focus mostly on the math for them. I assume this is Zumi-chan." Izuku. "Ah, nice to meet you, Todoroki-san. Yes, this is my daughter Zumi, so you're giving us a tour." Fuyumi. "Yes, I am, sir. Now please follow me and I'll show you two around." Izuku picked up Zumi, holding her up as they followed Fuyumi through the door. Fuyumi. "As you know, this is the administration building where all the staff is located along with their offices. So, if you ever need to talk to me or any other teachers, just come here. You didn't hear this from me, but we're trying to get a second building since we are going to implement a middle school soon." Izuku just smiled at the antics of the women as she led them outside and soon to one of the nearby buildings. She took them inside, showing a typical hallway of school but heavily decorated with various art and posters. Fuyumi. "This is the main building for the elementary and preschool students. Each floor is for an entire grade, and as they go through the years they move up a floor to the next grade until they graduate from the building." This confused Izuku as he remembered seeing all those other buildings. Izuku. "If this whole building is the elementary school, then what are all the other buildings for?" Fuyumi. "Oh, those are the buildings for the clubs and activities." Izuku's eyes bulged at that, making Fuyumi giggle as she led them outside again to walk by the buildings. Fuyumi. "Yep, each of these buildings is for activities a student may be interested in, since the last two classes for children are their own choice. So, they go to the building that intrigues them to learn something new, but the levels for each floor are about the same as the elementary building, but instead focus on the mastery of the concept. The reason they want to do this is that one day we would like to make this campus a genuine multi-grade level school. That means a pre-K, elementary, middle, and high school on one campus." Izuku. "A great goal to have. So what are the buildings' specialties?" Fuyumi. "Ah, good question. So for the remaining 8 buildings, there is art, science, quirk, mechanics, drama, technology, clubs, music, and sports study. The sports study is in the gym over there if you're wondering. We plan on adding more buildings for different studies, but that's for when we add the middle school and high school. So, what is Zumi interested in for hobbies?" Izuku put Zumi down as they reached a small park in the campus, allowing her to check out the equipment while he and Fuyumi talked on the bench. Izuku. "Well, she's kind of a jack of all trades at the moment, which kind of makes me jealous since I sucked at everything when I was younger. She's extremely athletic and very smart. Currently, though, she is really interested in art, technology, music, and heroes." Fuyumi. "You don't seem too pleased about the hero part. Something wrong?" Izuku sighed as he watched Zumi casually scale the playground house until she was on the roof before posing like All Might. Fuyumi looked genuinely shocked at watching a 5-year-old do it so casually. Izuku. "You're probably going to see this on her record soon anyway. Zumi is quirkless, yet her dream is to be a hero, which worries me, especially with how strong quirks are becoming." Plus she has some disabilities as well, which I hope your school can handle if you don't mind the quirk part that much. Fuyumi. Oh, of course. We have a strict no quirk intolerance policy. So, of course, we'll help with any problems Zumi may have. Izuku glanced at her for a second, checking to see if she was lying, but he couldn't see an ounce of deception from her. Izuku smiled as he turned back to Zumi. Izuku. Zumi has a mild case of autism and ADD. Both don't affect her intelligence or any motor functions, but both cause her to be socially awkward. Autism makes her not understand complicated emotions or to be able to read the mood, while ADD makes her prefer to be alone but yet at the same time wants to interact with her peers. Fuyumi. Oh, that is a tough case, but I and the staff will do the best we can. Can I please get your and your wife's number so I can contact you if anything comes up for her? Izuku. Of course, but it's just Zumi and I. The mother backed out of this a while back. Fuyumi. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Izuku. Don't be, she wasn't that great of a person, to begin with. There was an awkward silence for a second as Izuku gave Fuyumi his phone number and vice versa. However, the mood improved once Zumi came back with a hop and Izuku finally made the girl properly introduce herself, which she did awkwardly. Soon Izuku and Zumi paid their farewells after Izuku had formally registered Zumi into the school where she would start next week. Once home, Izuku was cooking dinner, taking glances at Zumi, who was drawing a small doodle of Fuyumi on a piece of paper, which unfortunately still looked better than anything he could make. Once finished with dinner, Izuku stood in front of the bookshelves once again with a look of determination. He picked up the book that had been haunting him for a while and turned to the couch where a sleeping Zumi could be seen knocked out. Izuku had a soft smile before turning to a frown as he opened his journal. Izuku. Anything for you, Zumi. Anything for you. Operation Puppetmaster. 1. Take over the drug trade in Japan. 2. Erase all the gangs except one. 3. Conquer the remaining gang. 4. Destroy the human trafficking ring. 5. Control the smuggling ring. 6. Kill the corrupt politicians. 7. Hunt Safety Commission heroes. 8. Expose the fake heroes and take care of them. 9. Kill all the crime bosses. 10. Find the love in AFO, and kill them. 11. Destroy the Meta Liberation Army. 12. Tear down the Safety Commission. 13. Destroy the 7 demon heads. Narrator Pav. An older Japanese man sat in the back of a crappy white minivan that barely drove in a straight line to an unknown location. The man wore a cheap fur coat with fake white fur at the top of the collar. Everything on his person was either a fake brand or cheap. Around him were other men in simple cheap suits, about 6 or so in total. This man's name was Chun Shin, the co-leader of the White Tigers, an old Yakuza gang that lost prominence ages ago and is now just a shell of its former self. The White Tigers began post-quirks but still struggled with the trying times, especially once the Hero Society fully formed. The way it is run is by dual leadership style, with both leaders usually having completely different viewpoints and even lieutenants. This style had lived for hundreds of years and unironically was the thing holding the gang back. Chun was traditional and what you could call a gentleman thug, while his fellow leader would do anything for power and money. This is why Chun found it weird that his partner called for a meeting at an abandoned warehouse. He was ready for the worst. They pulled up to the dockyard in its early morning light, and carefully exited the car, walking towards the warehouse. Chun ordered his fodder man to open the large door as the rest of his crew prepared themselves for a fight. The door opened and nothing happened, making Chun even more suspicious. He and his crew entered the dark warehouse, walking towards the sole light in the dark space which hovered over a poker table with the exact amount of chairs for him and Lituanits along with the other co-leaders as well. However, there was one extra chair with its back turned to them and a leather jacket hanging on it. Chun. Where the hell is Han? Questioned Chun, mostly talking to himself as he and his group walked further into the warehouse. Not coming. The chair with the leather jacket turned, revealing a man in a suit of high-grade armor that held a gray tone to it with some faded black aspects on it. However, the most notable piece of the equipment was the red helmet the man wore that seemed to stare right through their souls. Chun pulled out his old 1911 and aimed it at the man with his crew preparing with their own quirks or weapons. Now, there's no need for all that. I don't mean any harm. Well, at the moment at least. Depending on your answers they will determine if I'm a threat or not. Besides, it's not like those ancient relics you guys got there could actually get by my armor. Now please, take a seat. Izuku motioned with his hand to the seats across from me, however, they were all reluctant to do so. Izuku. Come on now. If I wanted to kill you all, you would be dead already. Eventually, the gangsters sat down opposite to Izuku, watching him with anxious eyes. Chun. This meeting was supposed to be with my co-leader and yet here you are instead. Why is that, Mr. Izuku? Red Hood. Chun. Red Hood. So, care to explain? Izuku. I assume you know how your clan's leadership changing works. Well, let's say I am the new co-leader due to trial by power. Chun looked dumbfounded. Chun. What? When? Izuku makes a dramatic effort to look at the watch on his wrist. Izuku. Oh, about 30 minutes or so ago. I went to him first for what I had to offer. He refused and now it's up to you to determine the fate of the gang. Oh, and here's some proof. Izuku tossed a bag onto the table that spilled open, dropping the heads of the previous co-leader and his crew. Chun's men gagged in shock and some even threw up looking at the corpses. However, Chun just stared at Izuku with complete focus, making Izuku smile under his mask. Chun. What do you want? Izuku. I want manpower. Manpower that you can get me once I complete my plan. Izuku stood up from his chair and started to pace around, causing all of the thugs to refocus on him. Izuku. The White Tigers are currently the weakest and poorest gang in all of Japan. To the point, the gang literally owns one gun that is older than the whole gang combined. So pathetic that they are used as drug runners by better gangs. I'm going to destroy every gang in Japan minus yours, but if you don't join me I can just start one from scratch. Izuku. And once I get rid of all the gangs it'll be easy picking for you guys to take over the top, of course though if you accept this deal. You answer to me and me alone, hell it won't be that bad, just follow my rules and you basically have free reign. So, what do you say? Izuku asked as he turned to Chun, visibly thinking this over before staring at Izuku with defeated but accepting eyes. Chun. What are your terms? Zumi could be seen drawing in the corner of her classroom with a neutral expression. Today was her first day of school and as usual, she felt out of place. Most of the kids had already known each other from the previous year, so it was almost impossible for her to make friends, and her disability definitely didn't help either. Even though she was barely a toddler, she already knew she was going to be that shy and lonely girl throughout her school years. That was until a girl sat across from her with a very large smile as she loomed over Zumi. Hello, my name is Shomi. Your drawing is very beautiful. What's your name? Zumi felt a bit intimidated by the loud girl and her voice, but quickly forced herself to power through it. After all, this would probably be her last chance to make a friend. Zumi. Oh, it's Zumi and thank you. Zumi said quietly, causing the Shomi to beam with happiness, actually making Zumi squint her eyes from the bright light. Shomi immediately stood up and sat in the seat next to Zumi. Zumi was a little uncomfortable with someone invading her space, but for some reason, it wasn't that bad this time around. Shomi. So, what are you drawing, Zumi? It looks like a man. Zumi flushed as she showed a pretty decent drawing of an older man with green hair to Shomi. Next to the older man was a smaller girl holding the man's hand. Zumi. It's my dad. Shomi. Oh, yeah, I see the resemblance, so what's he like? Is he cool like my dad? Zumi flushed again from the conversation as she began mumbling. Zumi. He is cool and is very kind to others. Izuku slammed a man's head into a wall before shoving the barrel of his revolver into the man's mouth, firing the gun and killing them. Izuku turned as the door opened, revealing 3 men with assault rifles. Izuku fired 3 shots, killing all 3 of them with clean headshots. Izuku reloaded as he exited the office of the laundromat he was at. The Black Owl gang was killed 10 minutes after Izuku's deal with the White Tigers. Show me. Oh, that's amazing. My dad is a little bit of an airhead sometimes, but he usually means well. He also works as a hero alongside my mom. That seemed to actually get Zumi's attention completely, as she seemed to brighten up and even speak louder. Zumi. Really? What are their hero names? Shomi put a finger over her mouth, as she gave a cheesy smile. Shomi. That's a secret, but you seem really smart, so I bet you can figure it out. Zumi pouted at that. Zumi. Ah, well, my dad is just a dumb businessman that probably does boring stuff. Izuku German suplexed a man through a table before getting up and popping 2 bullets into his skull. As Izuku looked down on the corpse, another man tackled him in the back trying to bring him down, but Izuku elbowed him in the side of the head and turned, kneeing the man several times in the face before popping 2 shots in his skull. Izuku ducked behind a crate as a group of men entered the warehouse and started opening fire at Izuku. Izuku cussed as he reloaded his gun. Show me. Well, is he your hero, at least? Zumi smiled softly as she drew a tiny cape on, drawing Izuku's back. Zumi. Yes. Izuku slammed a car door shut repeatedly on someone's head as Zumi monologued about her father. Zumi. He never gives up on what he sent his mind to. Like for me. Izuku slammed the door hard, making a loud audible crack as blood splattered onto him. Izuku leaned back as a gunshot narrowly missed his head. He looked down, seeing a man holding a gun, shaking uncontrollably due to the blood loss from a gunshot wound. Izuku growled as he stalked towards the man. The man tried to fire more shots, but his gun clicked several times, signaling he had no more ammo. Zumi. He is also really nice to strangers or anyone they meet. But he does get angry if they make me cry or are just rude. Izuku kicked the man in the face, making him get on his back, and then stomped on his neck, making a loud crunch fill the air. Izuku sighed as he looked around the bloodied underground bar. Show me. Well, he sounds like an amazing dad. I can't wait for you to introduce me as your best friend. Zumi. Yeah, wait, what? 2 hours later. Izuku sighed as he spun in an office chair, twirling the gun on its trigger guard with his finger. He was in a manager's office of some office building where of course a prominent gang was using it as a front. It wasn't hard making his way to the boss's room, but the problem came when it turned out the boss wasn't actually in the building at the time. So, here he was wasting his time interrogating a nobody. Izuku. Come on, man. You're wasting my time here. It's not like you were able to warn him in times, so you're not buying time for anyone. You're just wasting mine, so spill or I take the other eye. Izuku stopped spinning the chair as he turned to a man hanging on the wall, crucifix style, with knives holding him in place. He was extremely injured, bleeding profusely onto the floor with his right eye missing. The last threat broke the man. Brooker. Ikikiramu Ramen on 68th Precinct, East Villa near Train 8. Izuku. See, that wasn't so hard. You could have avoided those 5 minutes of pain, and for what? Some idiot that hides their ugly ass behind a black mask. Izuku didn't let the man retort as he fired a single round in the head, killing him. Izuku made a dramatic sigh as he got up from the chair and started stretching out his back. Izuku. Asshole, ruined my speedrun. Well, time to stretch my legs again. Izuku cracked his back as he began walking towards the exit until he stopped as he heard a fizzing nearby. He quickly ducked behind a desk as the wall leading to the outdoors exploded open. Izuku crouched and aimed his 2 dual pistols at the hole, waiting for something to enter. A figure appeared in the smoke, making Izuku narrow his eyes as dynamite revealed himself. Bakugo smirked as he laid eyes upon the criminal the safety commission have been looking for. Bakugo. Oh, so you're the hood loser we've been looking for. Do me a favor and make this interesting, okay? Bleg. Bakugo stuck his tongue out at Izuku while making an "I'll kill ya" gesture. Izuku watched with a neutral expression as the Bakugo in front of him overlapped with a static filtered memory of a younger Bakugo doing the same gesture to him while sitting on a couch. Izuku's grip tightened on his guns as immediately opened fire on Bakugo. Bakugo used an explosion to dodge to the side as he returned fire with a barrage of AP shots. Izuku started running parallel to Bakugo, continuing to fire at him as Bakugo did the same, recreating a cheesy shootout scene which both recognized and couldn't help but grin to themselves. Bakugo then just released a larger explosion, knocking Izuku through a wall into the main office area. Bakugo was quickly on his tail, readying another explosion. Bakugo. Just give up and stop wasting my time. Izuku. Nah. Bakugo. Fuck you mean, nah. Izuku didn't respond as he rushed Bakugo, redirecting his palm towards the wall, completely tearing it open to the outside. Izuku socked Bakugo in the face and immediately dove out of the opening, grappling onto a nearby building, quickly running as soon as he landed on the roof. Izuku didn't need to turn around to know Bakugo was right on his ass, evident by the loud cursing and explosions. Bakugo, get back here. Izuku looked to his forearm clicking on a screen revealing a map. He quickly voice commanded the address, causing the screen to disappear and reappear inside the HUD of his helmet, showing him the fastest way to the last crime boss's location via a blue trail. Izuku effortlessly dodged AP shots as he continued on to his last target, Black Mask. Bakugo was growing frustrated as he couldn't catch up to the killer, and this killer was effortlessly dodging all his attacks. Why did his movement feel so familiar? Bakugo ignored the thought as he exploded in front of Izuku and landed in front of him, aiming his gauntlet at the killer. Bakugo, try and survive this bastard. As Bakugo pulled the trigger for his gauntlet, Izuku quick-drawed his gun, firing a single bullet hitting the trigger mechanism with pinpoint accuracy, causing the gauntlet to implode on itself, knocking Bakugo back until he hit a wall of one of those rooms on roofs. Izuku quickly shot a trap gun at Bakugo, making net land on him that quickly bolted its edges into the wall behind him. Bakugo groaned at the pain of the explosion, feeling the scorched skin on his right arm. Izuku started to piece a rifle together from the backpack he had on the whole time, making Bakugo confused on where it was since he swore it wasn't there before. Izuku, don't worry, you'll live. You are resistant to explosions, so at most you'll be bruised for a couple of weeks. Bakugo, why? Izuku, pest control. Izuku aimed the assembled rifle down at the ramen shop across the street, where he saw several men in black suits standing guard outside. Izuku toggled a button on the side of his rifle, causing the barrel to start spinning. The scope on the rifle then started tagging each of the black-suited men until Izuku focused the barrel at the entrance once more. The door opened, revealing a man in a black skull mask stepping out, making Izuku smile as he brought his finger to the trigger. Izuku. Bang. Like a roar of thunder, the rifle boomed as it fired multiple rounds in seconds, hitting every single marked target in an instant, finishing the job. Izuku scanned the bodies for a few more seconds, making sure before standing up and disassembling his rifle. Izuku. Well, that wraps that up. Definitely got my blood flowing there, Dynamite. You should probably get that gauntlet thing checked. It's been a flaw in your costume since high school. Bakugo. Why aren't you killing me? Izuku. Because killing you would do more damage to my plan than good. Izuku didn't listen for Bakugo's retort as he jumped off the roof, grabbing away. Bakugo huffed as he rested his head on the wall behind him, very much frustrated. Bakugo. Fucking bastard. A few hours later, Izuku stood outside Zumi's school waiting for her to exit. He was wearing his leather jacket along with a surgical mask, but allowed his hair to flow freely. Izuku turned towards the entrance as he heard laughter, and his eyes widened as he saw Zumi actually talking to another girl her age. Izuku smiled as his face softened. Zumi was so caught up in her conversation she didn't even notice that she walked by her father. Izuku. Sue, who's your friend there, Zumi? Zumi jumped and yelped at her father's voice, making her turn and seeing him give her a teasing grin under his mask. Zumi flushed in embarrassment as she quickly hid her red cheeks in her hands, while the friend in question had a confused look with a smile on her face. She quickly walked up to Izuku, making him inspect her for the first time. She had semi-long black hair with white tips at the end, and both eyes were an obsidian black color. She was a tad taller than Zumi, but he couldn't really tell if she was older than said girl. Shomi. Hello, my name is Shomi. I'm Zumi's best friend. Nice to meet you, Mr. Zumi's dad. Shomi said all this while posing like a bodybuilder, which caused Izuku to sweat drop and make Zumi even more embarrassed. Izuku. Is that true, Zumi? Zumi didn't verbally respond, instead she just gave a short nod with an embarrassed smile, which made Izuku give her a sweet smile as he patted her head. Zumi went into the hand like a puppy, making Izuku chuckle as he turned to Shomi. Izuku. Well, thank you, Shomi-chan, for taking care of Zumi for me. But this little lady needs to get home to be ready for tomorrow. Shomi. Okay, see you tomorrow, Zumi-chan. Zumi just waved back as she took her father's hand as he led her to his car. Izuku was in his own thoughts as he buckled Zumi into her car seat and started the car. Today just confirmed what he wanted to do, know what he needed to do. He needed to complete his plan, so children like Zumi and Shomi can live in a carefree world without anything to worry about. Izuku. It will all be for her own good. Narrator Pav. Izuku stood on a rooftop of a warehouse in his hood outfit, looking through the panel roof with a very annoyed look behind his mask. Below him was a drug factory that was run by a different gang, a gang that somehow got under his radar during his cleansing. It had been 2 months since Izuku had gained control of the White Tigers and effectively grabbed the underworld of Japan in a tight grip. Izuku had made a policy on drugs when he gained power. No drugs were to be sold to any student of any schooling or in a 10-mile radius of any school. The only drugs allowed to be sold were marijuana, LSD, trigger, blockers, cocaine, and shrooms. If any broke these rules they would answer to Izuku, and well, they usually weren't seen again. For crimes Izuku was a little more lenient with what the White Tigers could do. Drug peddling, money laundering, robbery, shoplifting, exotic animal trading, assassinations, and car theft were all fair game. Any other crime unless approved by Izuku was forbidden, especially around the Forbidden Zone, a 50-mile radius of Izuku's home and Zumi's school. That resulted in immediate death. Izuku sighed as he stared up at the night sky. Thankfully Zumi was having a sleepover at Shomi's house tonight. So, he didn't have to come home late at night just to find her on the couch asleep having waited for him to come home. It broke his heart every time. Izuku let out a steady breath as he readied himself for the fight. 10 guards on the catwalk monitoring the workers who were chained to the floor working on the drugs. Another 5 guards walk amongst the workers making sure they are working. There were more guards outside the warehouse, but Izuku already took care of them. Izuku stood up and pulled out his 2 old reliables while cracking his neck. Izuku. Showtime. Izuku hopped up and crashed through the window, firing 3 quick shots in succession, killing the closest people on the catwalk while landing on the 4th person's back, firing a 4th shot in the back of his head before firing 8 more shots that destroyed every single light in the warehouse. The guards immediately panicked and opened fire on where they last saw Izuku, showing they missed completely and instead hit the 5th guard whom Izuku had grappled to himself at the moment the lights went out. 5 bangs rung out with the flashfire, showing Izuku hanging from the ceiling with a rope, killing the guards on the ground floor before the remaining guards could refocus on the hanging Izuku. Izuku fired a flare into the ceiling, causing the glare to make the guards miss the killer. Izuku fired 5 final shots followed by 5 thuds of metal clanking, signaling Izuku's aim was true. Izuku sighed as he dropped from the ceiling, landing with a metal thud on the catwalk. He shot a metal object into the ceiling, causing a spotlight to form illuminating the warehouse. Izuku looked at the terrified workers with a neutral look before sighing as he jumped to the ground floor and began freeing each one. This was just a side gig that came up while he was patrolling. His main goal was the human trafficking ring of Japan and then the world. Which he was going to do after this. After all, he had gotten a lead which would lead him to a popular strip club. Izuku freed the last worker and shot into the air while yelling at them to run. They obeyed, allowing Izuku to plant a mine on the center table. The 12 sultans, the leaders of the largest human trafficking ring in the world, and his lead will get him to the first sultan, and after that, it'll be a cakewalk. The warehouse blew into a million pieces as Izuku watched from a nearby roof. For her and only for her. ***. 1 hour later, Izuku walked down a busy street in a brown leather jacket with a red hood covering his head. He stared up into a bright pink light showing a giant sign saying, "Sugars." This was the place, thought Izuku as he slipped into the alleyway to avoid the crowd. He saw the side door of the club open with a guard stepping out trying to get a cig lit. When he turned to Izuku's location, he received a knife in the head. Izuku tossed the body into a dumpster in one move as he slipped into the building. Izuku stuck to the shadows as he maneuvered through the back rooms of the building. A guard turned a corner and received a knife in the throat before getting tossed into a closet. Izuku soon reached a storeroom where he saw dozens of cages with women in them. Izuku walked by them, seeing the collars on their necks. They all seemed to be foreigners, with a few being Japanese, but most were underage. Izuku ignored them for now as he made his way to an office door. He kicked the door down, finding a fat Japanese man fondling a young teenage girl in a skimpy bikini with tears in her eyes. The pimp looked enraged seeing someone interrupt his fun time until Izuku pulled out a gun, aiming it straight at the pimp, making him freeze. Izuku glanced at the girl and told her to scram, which made her get off the man's lap, but she didn't run away, instead watched with a weird sense of awe as Izuku neared the man. "Pimp. And now there's no reason to." The man didn't get to finish as Izuku grabbed the back of his head and slammed it multiple times into the desk before tossing the man against the wall with a thump. Izuku then slammed his foot into the man's head with a crack before grabbing him by the collar and pulling him to eye level. Izuku, now, you're going to tell me exactly where the 12 sultans are. If you don't, I will castrate you. Pimp. Wait, I can't or they'll kill me. Izuku. Well, let's just say if you don't, you'll wish I killed you after I'm done. You know, I think you need some convincing. Pimp. Wait, get away from me, ah. The man screamed as he was dragged onto the table with Izuku yanking the man's left eyeball out. After that he squealed like a pig, confessing what he knew. Unfortunately, it was only 3 of the 12 sultans, but it was a start. After he got what he wanted, Izuku stabbed his knife into the man's skull, and placed his red helmet on with a click. He turned to the girl as he pulled out his 2 handguns. Izuku. In exactly 15 minutes, call the heroes. This won't take too long. Izuku slammed a button on the desk labeled lockdown, causing the lights to turn red and every entrance to close down. Like fish in a barrel, thought Izuku as he kicked the door down. He turned one last time to the girl, giving her a nod before stalking down the hallway. 2 guards turned the corner, followed by 2 loud bangs making their bodies hit the floor. Izuku turned the corner, dodging a swing of a bat as he fired a round into the man's knee, making him collapse while screaming before Izuku fired a second round into the head. Izuku cracked his neck as he began tearing through the club. After he was done, there was no one left besides the women. Izuku returned to the office and began scavenging through it while the girl turned off the lockdown. It only took Izuku 5 minutes to clear the building. Izuku dug through a cabinet before he found an invoice, making him growl as he stared at the contact. It seemed All for One was still alive and kicking, and buying girls nonetheless. Most likely taking the ones with interesting quirks for his collection. Unfortunately, though, no delivery address, just that they come straight from the 12 sultans, with this one being from Egypt. His first stop, it looked like. Izuku started exploring the club once more, now with an analytical eye as he tried to search for more clues. He eventually found a side room that he had missed the first time around. It seemed to be a changing room with the tag on it being Ms. Cosplay. Izuku opened the door to check on the dancer but froze as he laid eyes on the person sitting on the chair touching up her makeup. It was a young woman with messy blonde pigtails in a very skimpy lingerie. A cold anger consumed Izuku as the woman turned towards him, revealing a toothy canine smile and eyes of yellow. The grip on Izuku's gun tightened as he stared at the crazed killer. The woman bounced out of her chair as she turned to Izuku. Toga. It's about time someone came. I thought my show was an hour ago. Who are you? Toga asked defensively as she backed up, trying to reach her trusty knife. However, that didn't matter as Izuku raised his gun and shot a singular round, piercing Toga right in the middle of her stomach. Toga released a yelp as she fell backward onto the floor, holding her stomach. She tried to back away when Izuku began to stalk towards her, but a horrifying realization came over her. Toga. I can't feel my legs. Izuku raised an eyebrow as Toga seemed to begin melting until it stopped, revealing the true Toga. She was fat, scarred, and ugly, with needle marks all over her wrists and forearm. Izuku felt disgusted looking down at the villain. Izuku. Damn, had to use your quirk to just look like you used to. Pathetic. Toga. Who are you? Izuku yanked off his mask as he knelt down to Toga's face. She began to blush, but before she could even say anything, Izuku shot her in the shoulder, then grabbed the wound and squeezed down, making her scream in pain. Izuku. Where are they? Izuku asked in a cold tone as he stared down at Toga, making her shiver with fear and blood loss. Toga. I don't know. After Shigi was dropped by AFO, we all went our separate ways. It's been so hard. Toga didn't get to begin her sob story as Izuku stood up, aimed his gun at her head, and pulled the trigger. Bang. Dash. The next morning, Izuku walked through a gate while in a green hoodie with a surgical mask tied to his face. He was going to pick up Zumi from her sleepover with Shomi. As Izuku walked closer to the estate, he couldn't help but wonder why it looked so familiar. He rang the doorbell and couldn't help but feel nervous, since this was the first time Zumi actually had a friend, let alone a sleepover. The 2 children had been close since day one, but Izuku still couldn't help but worry. He was knocked out of his thoughts by the door opening. Izuku's eyes widened at seeing the occupant. Izuku. Todoroki-san. At the door was Zumi's beautiful elementary teacher, confusing Izuku greatly, making him think he went to the wrong house. This made Fuyumi giggle as from behind her Shomi and Zumi poked their heads out. Izuku. I think I'm missing something here. Fuyumi. Giggle, it's fine. I guess I forgot to tell you, but Shomi is my niece. I watch over her when her parents are busy. Izuku. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Fuyumi. Please come on in. It'd be rude not to over some refreshments before you leave. Izuku reluctantly came in, showing the two girls they could continue to play as he talked to Fuyumi. The living room was nice with a sense of a traditional vibe to it, he liked it. Fuyumi led him to a couch in the living room where there was a connected kitchen which she walked to. Izuku. So, how did Zumi do? Fuyumi. She did really well, had a few moments where she was very nervous, but after a while she just enjoyed herself. Izuku smiled. Izuku. That's good. Futumi. Shimura-san, you can take off your hood if you want. I know it's pretty stuffy in here. Izuku contemplated it for a second before sighing as he pulled it down, revealing black hair, showing Izuku dyed in case someone asked for the same question. Fuyumi noted that his hair color was different but didn't point it out as she put a teacup in front of him while sitting across from him with a smile. Izuku. Well, this is a better chance than ever. Can you do me a favor, Todoroki-san? Fuyumi. As long it is reasonable and legal. Izuku. Well, reasonable is a stretch. Next week I am going on a 3-week-long business trip, maybe longer. I was wondering if you could watch over Zumi while I'm out of the country. I don't want to leave her on her own or in a daycare. Fuyumi thought it over for a second before turning to Izuku with a smile. Fuyumi. Of course. Izuku smiled as he thanked her before they returned to talking about random stuff. Elsewhere. Bakugo stood outside a nightclub in his hero costume and a somber look on his face. This was no party either, evident by the field of yellow tape around the perimeter. 86 people were killed in one night in a single nightclub that was also a human trafficking ring. They found over 100 girls on the property, unknown on the culprit. As Bakugo stood there, a cop walked over to him. Cop. Sir, I think you would want to see this. Bakugo. Sai, lead the way. The cop took Bakugo to the back of the club, passing a lot of bodies on the way that the forensics were working until the cop opened a door that was labeled Ms. Cosplay. Bakugo grimaced at the bloody mess until his eyes widened once he recognized the body. Bakugo. It can't be, we looked everywhere for them. Cop. It is, sir. Himiko Toga, the vampire villain, was found dead when we arrived. Bakugo stared down at the corpse with a neutral expression before turning around and walking away. Bakugo. Good riddance. Narrator Pav. Fuck. Izuku grunted as he continued to dig a pair of pliers into his bicep. He was in his hood outfit, but the most noticeable thing in the room was him sitting on a table full of bullets, drugs, money, and blood. The second most noticeable thing that could be seen inside the dark, musty room was heaps of corpses on the floor. Izuku finally let out one final grunt as he yanked the pliers out of his skin, showing a bleeding bullet into the light. Izuku scoffed as he tossed the pliers away and began slipping his armor back on. He inspected his handiwork around the room and sighed as he reloaded his handgun. Well, at least he didn't have to worry about the police. They were almost as corrupt as Gotham. He was in Cairo, Egypt, beginning his hunt on these sultans. So far they were down one. Izuku glanced down at one of the bodies, the Sultan of the Nile. Wasn't too impressive, but still got a shot on him right between the armor. There was now a total of 11 sultans left, with all of them located in the Middle East. 3 in Egypt, 1 dead, 3 in Saudi Arabia, 2 in Israel, 2 in Iran, and 2 in Iraq. Sultans of the Middle East. 1. Sultan of the Nile, Egypt, pyrokinesis. 2. Sultan of the Pyramids, Egypt, quirkless. 3. Sultan of the Desert, Egypt, sand manipulation. 1. 4. Sultan of Distribution, Saudi Arabia, quirkless. 5. Sultan of Recruitment, Saudi Arabia, seducer. 6. Sultan of the Rock, Saudi Arabia, marble armor. 7. Sultan of Jordan, Israel, quirkless. 8. Sultan of the Temple, Israel, revealer. 9. Sultan of the Mountains, Iran, earthquake. 10. Sultan of the People, Iran, instigator. 11. Sultan of the Fields, Iraq, quirkless. 12. Sultan of the Sultans, Iraq Gunhead. Izuku. Such a pain in the ass. Izuku grumbled as he pulled out a small disc that expanded, revealing a hollow map of the country with 2 areas marked in green. The locations of the other 2 sultans in Egypt. He sighed as he turned the disc off and tucked it away back into a pouch. He looked to the ceiling as he stood up in a stretch. It was around midnight or so back home. Zumi should be just waking up for school at the moment. Izuku's face under the mask strained with determination as he pulled out his trusty handguns. Izuku. For her. Zumi and Shomi could be seen sitting on the floor of Shomi's room in Fuyumi's house, both mashing buttons on their controllers as they played Hero Smasher 4, the most popular fighting game, with Shomi as her father and Zumi as Uravati to make it fair. Yet Shomi was still getting destroyed even though it was her game. Zumi had a blank face as she slaughtered her friend while Shomi held a face of despair. Shomi. How are you winning? We barely started playing an hour ago and that was your first time picking up a controller. Zumi. Skill issue. Even though Zumi whispered it under her breath, Shomi still heard her and gained a tick mark on her forehead as Zumi hit her with a finishing blow. It had been a couple of days since Zumi was put in the care of Fuyumi, and of course, once Shomi learned her best friend was staying with her favorite aunt, she begged her parents to stay as well, which of course they agreed to. But one thing always confused Shomi and she guessed this was a better time to ask. So, once they began to pick new characters for the rematch, Shomi asked what had been bugging her. Shomi. So, why are you staying with my aunt? Well, I mean, I know your dad is on a business trip, but I mean, why couldn't you stay with your mom? At the same time Shomi asked that question, Fuyumi had arrived at the door with a tray of snacks. She froze at the words and stayed back as she waited for Zumi's response, curious about the matter as well since she didn't know if she could fully trust the father of said girl. Zumi however froze at the question, allowing Shomi to land her first combo on the girl, but also making said girl pause the game and glance at her friend with confusion than with worry. Zumi's face was filled with intense sadness, making her look like a kicked puppy that didn't know what it did wrong. Shomi panicked once she saw tears begin to pool in the corner of Zumi's eyes, along with Fuyumi who was peeking through a crack in the door. They both assumed right away the worst of the situation, thinking the mother was dead, not knowing that would probably be the better outcome. Shomi. You don't have to answer, Zumi. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Zumi. Number. It's okay. Interrupted Zumi with a sniffle as she wiped away a few of the tears that had fallen down. Shomi was a little taken aback by Zumi's voice since instead of her usual quiet shy tone it was forceful with a hint of anger behind it, but most evident was the sadness behind it. Zumi. I'll tell you, because you're my first friend, Shomi. We may not be forever, but for now, I want that in my life. The simplest way I can say this is she gave up on me. Fuyumi almost gasped at that but kept silent, but the one thing that bothered her. Why does a 5-year-old sound so mature? Zumi. She wanted a successor worthy of carrying her blood and name, but I couldn't even meet the bare minimum of her requirements, having a quirk. My dad is quirkless but he's so strong that she overlooked it, but she didn't feel like waiting for that what if. She and Dad never got along, but Dad tried his hardest for me even though it was hard for him. Dad never told me that day, but I know that was the last time I'd see my mother. Shomi didn't say anything during Zumi's rant, instead just letting the young girl let it all out. Once Zumi reached her last words, Shomi dabbed Zumi's cheek with a nearby tissue, confusing the girl, not realizing she had been crying the whole time. Shomi uncharacteristically put a comforting hand on Zumi's shoulder and nothing more, giving her support while respecting Zumi's boundaries. Zumi stared at her friend as Shomi just gave her a soft smile. In the next moment Zumi clasped Shomi into a tight hug and broke down. Shomi just returned it and softly patted her back. Zumi. Why didn't she want me? Shomi didn't respond as she just closed her eyes, letting a few tears fall down her face. Outside, Fuyumi also had tears in her eyes along with absolute fury running through her veins. She clasped the tray so hard that some of her quirk seeped through, slowly freezing the tray. Fuyumi realized this and calmed herself down. She wiped her face and took a calming breath. After a minute she knocked and let herself in. Wondering what this girl's father dealt with. Elsewhere. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Under a wave of gunfire stood Izuku behind the cover of a wall, as the bullets tore down the hallway aiming to kill him. Currently, he was under some ancient ruins evident by the catacomb-like hallways. He had finished killing the sultans in Egypt and was currently hunting the Sultan of the Rock. Izuku let out an annoyed grumble as another piece of the wall caved away due to the gunfire, as he was focused on the gunfire. A guard had flanked getting behind Izuku and raised his gun at him, but Izuku just lifted his own without looking and fired a single bullet killing the guard. Izuku backed away from the wall and grabbed a rocket launcher from a nearby dead body. He moved back to the wall and waited for the volley of gunfire to end. Once it did, he knelt down while peeking at the hallway and fired a single rocket, causing a massive explosion down the hall. Izuku tsked as he dropped the launcher and equipped a MP5, pulling the cock back as he began to sweep the catacombs through the smoke. Izuku. God, this is taking forever, thought Izuku in a bored tone as he released a single shot into the back of an injured guard on the floor. Izuku explored the fiery catacomb, killing any guard he came across, whether injured or lost in smoke. Soon Izuku reached a large wooden door with gold trimmings. He creaked it open with his gun pointed forward, ready for anything. Once he entered the room, he concluded it was the Sultan's operation room, evident by the many maps, drugs, and of course money. And unfortunately, no Sultan pissing off Izuku. Well, there was that giant marble statue next to him. Wait. Izuku didn't get a chance to react as the marble statue backhanded him, launching him through a wall before skidding to a halt, adjusting himself into a crouching position, aiming the gun at the broken opening in the wall. From the hole emerged the marble statue, making Izuku fire a barrage of bullets, which all bounced harmlessly off the statue until Izuku ran dry. Izuku. Shit. 2 small rounds. The statue formed a scimitar of marble and swung down at Izuku, with the mercenary dodging at the last second and firing a round from his handgun into the statue's face, once again not causing any damage. The statue growled and swung again, this time in a diagonal slash that Izuku ducked under and delivered a punch into the abdomen of the statue, actually cracking it slightly. The statue howled in anger as the cracks were covered and the statue kicked Izuku away. Izuku adjusted himself and fell into a boxer's stance with electricity bouncing off his knuckles from a built-in generator. Sultan. Annoying insect. Izuku. Yeah, fuck you too. The Sultan swung down, making Izuku sidestep it and countered with a right hook across the Sultan's face, causing a cobweb of cracks to form around the Sultan's face. They reformed into pure marble with the Sultan swinging at Izuku again, but this time Izuku took a deep breath, catching the blade at its middle, and exhaled, shattering the blade to a million pieces, making the Sultan's marble eyes widen. Izuku then released a barrage of punches into the Sultan's chest, causing a network of cracks to cover the Sultan's chest. Izuku took another deep breath before yelling as he punched straight through the Sultan's chest, causing the entire upper body to explode into marble pieces. Izuku. God, I need a drink. Fuyumi sighed as she took another swig of tea. Currently, she was sitting at the dining table in the morning of the weekend. It has been a little over a week since Zumi was put into her care, and she didn't mind the little girl since she was so adorable. Yet she couldn't help but feel worried for the girl, especially after the conversation she overheard a few days ago. However, due to her obvious conflict, she couldn't hide it from the two guests in front of her, Shomi's parents. Shoto. You okay there, sis? You seem a little tense. Shoto sat across from her in a suit as he had a meeting with businessmen after this. His hair was tied into a high ponytail with his white and red suit was pressed cleanly. Next to him was his wife with her long silky black hair let down instead of in its usual ponytail. Fuyumi sighed as a smile appeared on her face, thankful the two cared about her so much. It was nice to have a support system. Fuyumi. I'm fine, it's just I learned about the girl I'm caretaking. Don't bother asking what it is, I won't tell you unless I deem it a hero matter. The two heroes were surprised by the serious outburst of their relative but nodded along anyway. Momo cleared her throat as she began talking. She was also in formal attire due to a gala she had later. Momo. So the girl you're taking care of, her name is Zumi, right? Shomi cannot stop talking about her. Fuyumi. Oh, would you like to meet her? She loves heroes and would most likely recognize you two immediately since Shomi hasn't told her about you two being heroes. However, please be patient with her, she is very shy and can get anxious around new people. So take it slow. Momo. Of course. Fuyumi. Shomi. Zumi. Could you two come here for a moment? Shomi. Coming. The two parents smiled hearing their daughter's voice yell from some room, as energetic as ever. They heard a pair of footsteps coming down the hall, making the two parents put on a gentle smile in order to not scare the girl. Though once the two girls emerged from the hallway, the two smiles turned into looks of shock with their faces paling. The semi-long messy green hair with a set of freckles in the shape of diamonds, and a pair of green emerald eyes. The two heroes felt like they had just seen a ghost, and it didn't help when the girl's eyes lit up with wonder as she recognized the hero. It was like two shining stars in a night sky that looked at them like they were the greatest in the world. Just like a friend they used to know, just like him. The two didn't even realize they both had stood up from shock, knocking their chairs back, making the young girl wince and hide a little more behind her friend. They regained themselves after Fuyumi glared at them with both annoyance and confusion from their reaction. Momo gained herself first, walking towards the two girls with a gentle smile and knelt down to their eye level with her eyes solely on Zumi. Zumi peeked from behind her friend with awe. Even if she was feeling a little shy, she felt like she could trust the hero. Momo. Hi there. What's your full name, darling? Zumi shuffled in place as she messed with her skirt, looking down at the floor with a flushed look. She glanced to her friend for support, but Shomi just gave her a smile along with a thumbs up. So Zumi got her courage up and spoke in a soft voice that the adults could barely hear. Zumi. Zumi Shimura. Momo. What a cute name. As Momo talked to the children, Shoto walked towards his sister and asked her something real quick. Shoto. Fuyumi. What does her dad look like? Fuyumi. Her dad. Well, he has the same emerald green eyes as Zumi, with short messy black hair. I can't really say what his face looks like since he always wears a surgical mask. I think he's around your age. Shoto nodded at that as he turned to the young girl who was smiling in excitement as Momo created a little Russian doll that looked exactly like Zumi. Shoto still couldn't stop himself from imagining Izuku, who would stare with the same excitement whenever he saw a new quirk. It just couldn't be possible. Izuku was driving erratically down the street as he chased after a speeding car. Izuku turned down a street avoiding pedestrians and random shit, before turning back onto a main road. He then clutched the handbrake for support as he slammed on the gas, ramming straight into the side of the car he was chasing, pinning it against a wall. Izuku cursed as he kicked his door open, stepping out of the smoking car. He flexed his neck, getting a massive crack out. Izuku. Damn, that feels better. The occupants in the car he rammed tried to escape with fear, but with 3 shots from Izuku's raised gun they soon joined their fallen brothers. Izuku fired a 4th shot into the dashboard of the car, showing a little droid that began to hack into it. And with that came the end of the Sultan of the Temple and the last of his time in Israel. Izuku stared into the night sky with a lonely look as he blissfully ignored the screams of civilians as they ran from the crime scene. It had been about 2.5 weeks since he had last seen or even contacted Zumi, and well, that made him sad, but he couldn't risk contacting her, putting her in danger while he was working. Well, it was almost over, and then, bang! Izuku recoiled backwards as a sniper round pierced his shoulder, making him fall to one knee with a growl. The HUD in his helmet pinpointed where the shot came from, and returned a single shot that landed perfectly between the eyes of the sniper. Izuku hissed as he stood up, holding his shoulder in clear pain. Izuku took a deep breath and prepared a choice of words. Izuku. Fu. In that second week flowing into the third week, Shoto and Momo had visited several times, playing with their daughter and keeping an eye on her friend. They didn't understand why they felt so drawn to the little girl. Maybe it was because she looked like him, her awkward mannerism of hiding her face in her arms, her habit of apologizing for everything, her shyness around everyone, and her embarrassed look of red every time someone complimented her. It was like she was his reincarnation. Momo already shot down that theory Shoto came up with. Currently, they were at the park, both in disguise, as they watched the two girls play around on the playground. They, however, couldn't deny the little unreasonable thought in their head, that Zumi was related to Izuku. Even though it should be physically possible in every conceivable way, they just had this nagging feeling that they were onto something. However, their ideas were stopped by a sensible thought. Fuyumi. Drop it. It's not happening as long as Zumi is under my care. Fuyumi got the two heroes' attention as she sat next to them on the park bench in a sundress with a large sun hat on her head. She had an annoyed look on her face as she gave a side eye to the two. She had hit the nail on the hammer on what the two wanted. After all, they have been bugging her about it for the past week. Shoto. Come on, sis. We just need one drop of blood or a strand of hair. Fuyumi. And once again, that's not my call. You can ask her father once he returns from his trip. Momo. And what if he doesn't come back? Fuyumi didn't answer, she just gave a glare to the hero, which made Momo look away from her sister-in-law. With tension high in the air, the trio focused back on the children, trying to ease the tension. Fuyumi didn't know why she was angry. After all, that was a reasonable assumption, but she just had a feeling that Zumi's father would never do that. Right. Baghdad. Iraq, 12 p.m. Izuku was running full speed through guess again another catacomb. In front of him was the Sultan of the Fields, who stopped as he reached a dead end, turning around with a panicked look. Izuku, however, didn't stop, instead spearing the man through the wall, taking them into what looked to be a lounge before power slamming through a table with a crack. Izuku quickly recovered, putting a foot on the Sultan's chest, followed by a gun to his temple. Izuku. Now you're going to tell me where the Sultan of the Sultans is, or I'm going to make the janitor have a real hard time cleaning a giant red stain. Fields. Wait. I'll. The Sultan was interrupted by a loud bang that sounded like a tire screech, causing Izuku to look up just in time to see the blast of red energy that hit him square in the chest, launching him through the hole he made, making it fully collapse, making a dust cloud. The Sultan turned towards where the shot came from, showing a person with a gun for a head that smoked red before the gun transformed back to a face showing an older Middle Eastern man with an annoyed look. A look of a boss disappointed with their subordinates, the Sultan of the Sultans. Sultan. You almost spilled out your guts, Ashir. If you weren't the last one left, I would have killed you myself. Ashir. I am sorry, sir. The old man was about to tell the man to quiet down before a shot rang out, followed by a hole appearing in the Sultan's forehead, making him fall to the floor with a thud. The Field's Sultan looked back at the hole in horror, seeing a very pissed Izuku. He was panting as he stood there, the entire chest steaming from the blast along with sections of it melting down to the floor. Izuku raised his gun to the last Sultan, who tried to back away. Izuku. That hurt you, bitch. Bang. Japan. Zumi and Shomi were watching TV in the living room while the trio of adults talked at the dining table over a cup of tea. It was a Sunday morning, and since the two heroes had the day off. It had been about a month since Zumi was put in Fuyumi's care without a single word from the father, which made some of them worried that he might have dumped the girl. Yet Zumi still refused to entertain that thought, saying it was normal for his trips to be long. They were interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Fuyumi excused herself as she went to open the door. She opened the door and couldn't help but turn red, seeing a man in a leather jacket with fur sticking out the top, with black jeans and red sneakers. He had messy black hair that seemed to have grown from its shorter style and piercing green eyes. He was maskless for once, showing his gentle smile along with the 2 sets of freckles on his cheeks. Izuku. Hello, Todoroki-san. It's me, Zumi's father, can I come in? Fuyumi snapped back to reality. Closing parenthesis. Fuyumi. Oh, yes, of course. Zumi. He's here. Izuku stepped in with a gentle step, as if trying to protect something, but in an instant, a green blur crashed into his chest, making him hiss in pain. Shoto's and Momo's eyes widened as they watched the two children. They heard Fuyumi's call in the blink of an eye. Zumi was no longer there, and a green blur passed by them. They looked at each other with a clear question in mind: was she really quirkless? Izuku stared down, seeing Zumi with her head in his chest, and smiled through the intense pain in his body as he hugged his daughter. He closed his eyes as he embraced the child, but opened them when he felt a shift in the air. He looked up and saw Momo and Shoto staring at him. He could tell they didn't recognize him, but he could feel the thoughts brewing in their little heads. Izuku. Oh, you two must be Shomi-chan's parents. Nice to meet you. Izuku stuck out his hand with a smile, with Shoto staring at it before returning it with a neutral face. Shoto. Mutual. Izuku talked with Fuyumi about anything he should know about her. Once finished, he thanked her once again, and if she needed anything from him, just to let him know. Fuyumi denied it, and Izuku and Zumi returned home together. As he planted the child in the passenger seat, Izuku could still feel the two heroes staring holes into him. Not today, but one day they will discover his truth. Narrator Pav. Izuku sat on the edge of a rooftop with a pair of binoculars in his hand. Currently, It was the dead of night and he was overlooking some docks by Kyoto. He was going to take care of the smuggling groups that had been trying to sneak into Japan. Izuku ruffled his loose hair trying to think of something to handle this. Since most of these were thugs from other countries, his usual method of just killing all of them wouldn't work. They'd just come back, especially since they would try to spread their influence due to the power gap Izuku created. No, there was only one way to stop it. Izuku clicked on his mask as he stood up with determination. It was to deter them from ever coming back, that Izuku began to assemble a long rifle and measured the distance along with how many thugs there were. It was 4-dock pier with 3 small schooners docked on with about 15 or 16 men loading and unloading crates with several of them with guns watching over the workers. Izuku. 2 survivors should be enough. Izuku rested the sight on 2 men who were carrying a crate together down a ramp. Izuku fired a single shot like a roar of thunder, piercing one of the men's heads, killing him and causing the crate to fall onto the other thug's leg, making him scream in pain. Izuku readjusted before they could react, aiming at a man on one of the docking bridges, firing a single shot through his chest, killing him and before his body hit the ground. Izuku aimed at a fuel barrel on one of the ships, shooting it and causing one of the ships to explode into a fiery mess, killing the people on them. Izuku. 9 left. The thugs quickly panicked, running towards cover like madmen, allowing Izuku to pick off another 3 of them. They all were in spots Izuku couldn't hit them from, making Izuku pull back the cock, firing 3 canisters onto the dock, releasing clouds of gray smoke obscuring their vision. Izuku tossed his rifle aside as he pulled out his 2 handguns, dropping down to the ground floor and activating X-ray vision in his helmet. Izuku. 6 left. Izuku fired a singular bullet into a wall, making it ricochet into the head of a thug hiding behind a barrel. Izuku. 5. Izuku then pulled up behind a guy shaking behind a box, blasting his brains out, and then turned around, blasting another one's brains out. Izuku. 3. The smoke had disappeared by now, making Izuku turn to see a thug staring at him with fear, with a shaky gun pointed at him. In the next second the thug turned the gun on himself, finishing Izuku's job. Izuku looked around searching for survivors and found them quickly, the man who was trapped under the box and some poor thug who was burnt to a crisp from the explosion, barely hanging on. Izuku. Good enough. Izuku tossed 2 grenades on the remaining ships, causing them to explode, and went on his way. He'll let the rumors do the rest, he was too tired to do it himself. He retrieved his rifle and began his trek home on his bike. He quietly opened his door, not wanting to wake Zumi up. He hated leaving her alone at night, but he couldn't have Todoroki-san start to get any more suspicious. Izuku opened his front door and walked in. He tossed his helmet to the side, making a small thunk as it landed in a pile of dirty clothes. He slumped onto the couch, leaning his head back and grabbing his forehead with a heavy sigh. A thud made Izuku snap attention to the hallways, but he calmed down as he saw Zumi peeking from around the corner in her pajamas, holding her Uravity plushie. Zumi. Daddy, are you okay? Izuku's face darkened for a second before a soft smile crossed his lips. Izuku. Yeah, I'm okay. What are you doing up, Zumi? Zumi. I was waiting for you to come home. Izuku frowned for a second before returning to his smile as he patted his lap, making Zumi run towards him and laying her head down on his lap with a smile. Izuku began to caress the top of her head as he hummed a lullaby. It didn't take long for her to be out like a light. Izuku continued to hum as he picked her up and took her to her bed. He wishes he could be better. The next day asterisk. It was broad daylight with Izuku using a pair of binoculars. Currently, he was spying on another smuggling ring with them held up in some laundromat. He had just dropped off Zumi at school, so he had a few hours until he had to pick her up. Izuku froze as his instincts alerted him to something off behind him. Izuku dodged to the left with a lean. A feminine hand barely missed him and Izuku reacted by grabbing the hand by the wrist. Hooded green eyes met narrowed brown eyes. At one point these two could be considered best friends and in some lives something more, but now they were just strangers again. Izuku. Uravity. What's the occasion? Uravity. For the murder of 18 people and several other crimes, you are under arrest, Red Hood. Izuku. I've killed way more than that. Uravity growled as she front-kicked Izuku in the stomach, pushing them apart and forcing Izuku to let her wrist go. Izuku pulled out his handgun, firing several shots at her, aiming to kill, but his eyes widened when she placed her hands on the roof, activating her quirk, and lifted the piece to block the shots. Uravati then punched the slab towards Izuku. At the same moment she deactivated her quirk, causing the slab to rocket at Izuku with intense speed. Izuku hummed as he hoisted his gun, punching the slab into pieces. Izuku's eyes widened as Uravati was behind the slab, using it as cover to reach Izuku. She reached again towards Izuku, which resulted in him grabbing her wrist again, and throwing a punch towards her face, but she dropped low and went for a leg sweep, which he jumped over and tried to pull her up to elbow her face. Uravati caught the elbow, making a pink glow surround Izuku as Uravati pulled him up for a judo throw. Right before Izuku made contact with the floor, Uravati released her quirk to double the damage. Izuku, however, landed on his feet in a stance similar to a hip thrust, making Uravati's eyes widen. Izuku. From what my memories show, back in the day she needed to touch her finger pads together to deactivate her quirk, which took about 3 seconds. Now she can do it whenever she feels like it, truly a deep increase in quirk control and strength. She definitely deserves to be in the top 10, but that's not enough against me. Izuku let go of her wrist and grabbed her from her legs, pulling her off her feet and then kicking her while she was in midair, knocking her back. However, something fell out of her gauntlet as she skidded against the floor. Izuku's attention was entirely on the little plush, making him kneel down and pick it up. Uravati struggled to get up, holding her stomach until panic filled her as she saw the Red Hood holding her beloved keepsake. A small keychain of the old hero Deku's costume in chibi form. Uravati. Give that back. Izuku. The hero student Deku. Why carry the memory of a dead man from so long ago? Uravati. Because he was my best friend. Now give it back. Uravati began running at Izuku with a pink glow surrounding her, negating her gravity and allowing her to go faster. Izuku pulled out his gun, firing several shots at her, but she didn't stop at all, dodging them barely but never stopping. As if she was desperate to reach the Izuku, no, to reach the plush. Izuku. Obviously no concern for her life. How about this? Izuku turned the gun to the plush and immediately Uravati stopped in her tracks and held her arms out like she was trying to convince someone to come to her. Izuku stared at her where his eyes softened for just a split second before hardening as he tossed the plush behind him off the roof. He walked away as Uravati jumped off, going after the plush, completely ignoring him. It was an easy escape after that. The next week, Izuku was sitting on a park bench in a normal t-shirt that said summer shirt on it in kanji with some khaki shorts and sunglasses. It was a summer weekend and hot as hell, but for some reason, the two girls decided they wanted to go to the park and play. That is where he is now, as Fuyumi said hell no, and he kind of owed her anyway. In reality, though she had a teacher meeting, but Izuku liked to create more interesting storylines. Currently, the two girls were messing around in a sandbox with Izuku keeping a close eye on them. He felt the bench shift as someone sat next to him, but Izuku felt no need to increase his guard. He could hear the bones of the man creak and crack, showing their old age, along with the cane that was in his peripheral vision. The old man had long gray hair, but the thing that confused Izuku was why he had a scarf on in this heat. Izuku sighed as he had a feeling this old man was going to bother him. He was right. If you're planning on doing anything to those two girls, I wouldn't recommend it. Izuku. You heard me. Izuku. Yeah, I did. I just didn't think a senile old man would accuse me of something like that on a nice day. You're the one staring at them pretty hard. I know the parents of one of them, and I know for a fact they wouldn't associate with someone like you. Izuku. Yeah, I know those two. I guess I am pretty low on the social totem pole to associate with heroes. Yet my daughter seems to have no problem making friends with their daughter, so fuck off, old man, before I make you. Before the two could argue any further, Izuku received a text from Fuyumi saying she was ready and that they could head on over. So, Izuku stood up from the bench, giving the old man one last fuck you before he called the girls over. The girls quickly ran over while holding hands before stopping in front of the two men. Show me. Do you know this man? Show me. Gramps Aizawa. Of course, I do. He's Zumi's dad and Auntie Fuyumi's boyfriend. Izuku. Oi, Aizawa. I see. Izuku motioned for the girls to get into the car, which they complied with, hopping into the back. Izuku gave Aizawa one last number 1 before jumping into the driver's seat and driving away. It didn't take long for Izuku to arrive at the school, picking up the waiting Fuyumi and then heading towards her home. Fuyumi. Thank you again, Shimura-san, for taking them to the park. It means a lot to them and me. Izuku. Ah, it's the least I could do. After all, I still owe you for watching Zumi for so long. Fuyumi. I already told you. You don't have to pay me back for that. Izuku. Well, I still want to. Show me. God. Just kiss already. Izuku glared into the rearview mirror, seeing a cheeky show me with Zumi putting a hand on her mouth in shock, while Fuyumi had a massive blush on her cheeks as she pushed a hair back behind her ear and looked out the window. The car ride was silent for the rest of the ride, making Shomi feel like it was her fault. It was. 2 days later, Izuku was seen standing in an aisle of a grocery store looking at the selection of ketchup. He was currently doing his weekly shopping trip by himself since Zumi said that was boring and only for old people. He thinks Shomi is starting to become a bad influence on his girl. Though it didn't bother him that much, she was most likely safer in Vistov's hotel and apartments. No one touched his guests or residents without raising hell. Izuku tossed ketchup in the cart and made his way into the water aisle to get a case. He easily tossed a 100-bottle one into the bottom and saw in the corner of his eye a woman trying to pick one up into her cart. Izuku didn't pay her much mind, but he still picked up the water case and put it into her cart, and began to go on his way. Fuyumi. Shimura-san. Izuku. Todoroki-san. Ah, didn't notice that was you. How are you doing? Fuyumi. Just fine. Where's Zumi? Izuku. At home. She didn't feel like coming anyway, she's safer there than out here. Fuyumi. Giggle, you're really protective over her, aren't you? Izuku. Of course. There was an awkward silence for a second as they didn't know how to keep it up. Fuyumi was embarrassed, especially getting nervous as a blush appeared on her cheeks, but she slapped her cheeks, making Izuku look at her with concern. Then she continued to talk and talk and talk, trying to keep the conversation going. However, Izuku never stopped her, nor did he ever complain. Instead, he just smiled as he answered her questions and asked his own. In the line of the store registers, on the train back, on the sidewalk, Izuku was so comfortable with Fuyumi, something he hadn't felt in so long that he didn't even realize he had walked her home. Fuyumi stood outside her door staring at it for a second before turning back to Izuku with an embarrassed smile, making Izuku raise an eyebrow. Fuyumi. You know, I just thought of a way you can pay me back. Izuku. Oh, Fuyumi. How about dinner someday? Izuku looked stunned for a second before a sly smile came across his face. Izuku. Sure. Narrator Pav. Bang. Brain matter and blood geyser into the air as Izuku cocked back the pump of a shotgun. He pushed the body he jammed the barrel into off of him, wiping some of the gooey sponge-like stuff off him as he tossed the shotgun to the floor. It wasn't his. Currently, it was a weekend night and he was in some outskirt town outside of Tokyo in a dingy warehouse filled with bodies. The smugglers were still coming even after 3 weeks of his methods. He hoped by tomorrow this would convince these bastards to stay out of his country. He already had enough shit to deal with due to the gangs still trying to emerge. Boom. The large bay doors of the warehouse blasted open, making Izuku pull out his dual handguns. Squadrons of armed men in military-like outfits strolled inside, along with the roof busting in, with several more landing on the catwalk aiming down at Izuku with the ground squad surrounding him. Izuku immediately recognized the uniform, demon heads. Then one final man entered, someone that Izuku recognized from his days with the organization. A tall American with army-cut blonde hair with stormy gray eyes. He looked to be around his late 30s and had a very muscular build. He was also in the same outfit as the other men, but from his presence alone you could tell he was the leader, which was true. Jack Stern, the lieutenant to the head of power. Stern. Hood. It's been a while. The man's voice was raspy, most likely from being a smoker, but yet it still held a hint of authority. Izuku. Stern. You're either going senile or you think I've gotten weaker if you think 30 men is enough for me. Stern. Ah, that's because we aren't here for a fight, unless it's a fight you want. We are just here for some answers. Now Hood, why are you causing all this chaos? First, the gangs, then the sultans, and now these dumb smugglers. You're causing a lot of unrest and economic misfortune that's beginning to affect the heads. Yet we are confused about all the trouble. We know it's not from any contracts or jobs, so why? Izuku knew that his answer would most likely result in him taking a few bullets, but it was worth it for her. He needs to draw the line between him and the demon heads, and it was now or never. Izuku. I'm doing what I need to do for her. To protect my daughter from people like you and me. To make sure nothing can get in her way in life. I know I can't do much like who she decides or her friends or even take your daughter to work day. I know can never stop crime, that's impossible, but what is possible is controlling crime. I will control crime so that this world will be perfect for her. And I'll accomplish this no matter who gets in my way. Even if it's you. Stern. Lame. Light him up. Izuku threw a smoke bomb down at his feet, narrowly avoiding a stream of bullets piercing the smoke. He activated infrared and returned fire, killing 15 of them instantly. Izuku was feeling himself until 5 bangs rang out in the warehouse, followed by 5 thuds from his armor as bullets landed true into his armor. 3 connected with his chest, 1 onto the gun in his right hand, and the final in the center of his head, knocking him flat on his back. Izuku cursed with a wheeze as he had forgotten about Stern's quirk, with Stern smiling while holding a revolver to the sky with a smoking barrel. Jack Stern. Quirk trickshot. As long as he does not aim directly at his target, any shot fired will hit his target with a guaranteed hit on specified points of said target. The more it is trained, the more specific the pinpoint can be. If the target cannot be seen, accuracy is doubled. Izuku coughed as he caught his breath while standing up. He fired 10 more shots through the smoke, killing 10 more guards. However, 7 bangs echoed through the warehouse, followed by 7 thuds as more shots connected on Izuku. This time 4 in the chest, and 3 in his left leg, making him fall to one knee. The smoke dissipated, revealing a panting Izuku on one knee with Jack Stern looking down at him with a disappointed look. At his side were the remaining guards, which were about 5 in total. Stern. Damn Hood, you really have lost your touch. Everything about you just seems so dull. Where's the killer who was the first person to actually dodge my shot? Now it's just a pathetic man trying to stop what is natural in this fucked up world. All for what? A retarded child. Izuku growled, trying to lift his gun at Stern, but Stern fired 6 times in the air, making a bullet strike Izuku's gun, knocking it out of his hand, and the rest of the 5 ricocheted off his armor in his chest, then piercing each of the remaining guards in the head, killing them. Izuku fell on his back from the pain, trying to breathe with heavy gasps. He could taste the iron from his blood in his mouth. The wetness from his back, he felt the pool of his own blood beginning to form underneath him. Stern frowned as he stared down at this pathetic being, and slowly began to reload his revolver 1 bullet at a time. Stern. I thought you would be different compared to the last one to carry that name, but just like him, you let something as foolish as love weaken you. And just like before, someone strong will take out the weak man that couldn't keep up. Don't get me wrong, your ideal is admirable, but it could never be possible. Especially for a quirkless. It was an enjoyable time to call you an ally, Izuku, but you of all people would understand. Orders are orders. Stern finished reloading and fired a singular shot, knocking Izuku's helmet off, revealing his bloodied face. Stern aimed down at Izuku and smiled a bittersweet smile. Stern. So long, friend. If it makes you feel better, apparently Ms. Fang wants to give her daughter another shot. She'll take care of her once you're gone. Izuku's eyes shot fully opened and his body began to shake with fury. The veins in his eyes began to turn a bright green, along with the veins in his skin invisible to Stern due to his armor. Stern shot a singular shot that rocketed towards Izuku's head but missed, instead piercing the floor. Stern's eyes widened as in a blink Izuku was no longer on the floor but instead mere inches from Stern, with his face about to connect with Izuku's fist. Then a loud crack resemblant to a roar of thunder echoed in the warehouse as Izuku's fist connected with Stern's face. Stern got rag-dolled back before sliding to a stop on the floor, face up with his jaw barely hanging on. Izuku puffed out his breath, making the steam flow from between his teeth. The bullet wounds from his chest slowly began to close as the green glow in his veins pulsed. In another shadow step, Izuku appeared over the downed Stern and straddled him. Izuku began to wail on him with strong punches that cracked the air like whips, followed by the ground beginning to crack like a spider web from around Stern's head. Izuku stopped and pulled his hands over his head and clasped them, preparing for the final blow. Stern just looked up with awe as he tried to form a bloody smile. Stern. There he is. Izuku slammed his hammer strike down, finishing the job. Izuku Midoriya, special trait, Lazarus altered. Due to all the Lazarus healing serums injected into his body during his torture session and then his eventual revival due to Ares' outburst. Izuku's body was genetically changed with the Lazarus serum merging with him, giving him a small healing factor that increases dramatically when enraged, similar to a Lazarus rage. Speculated it became hereditary. The next day a bandaged-up Izuku could be seen lying on his couch snoring until his alarm rang loudly, making him groan as he stood up. He picked up his phone and turned off the alarm, staring at the time with drowsy eyes. His eyes exploded open with shock as he shot up with a groan and began putting on his second hood armor, which was the classic black jacket and white compression shirt underneath along with jeans. Izuku was out the door in a second on his way to his date with Fuyumi. Izuku put on his red helmet, ignoring the possibility of getting caught. He knew if he got in a real fight he most likely would lose due to his wounds, but he didn't know why, but he felt like risking it. Hence he was speeding through traffic on his bike at insanely illegal speeds. Izuku, however, slammed on his brakes as a large glacier cut him off on the street, easily avoiding the civilians and their cars, showing years of quirk control and mastery. Izuku. Shit, good thing I brought polymer grenades. Shoto. Red Hood. Izuku glanced to the top of the glacier, seeing Shoto glaring down on him with hate. Izuku scoffed as he checked his watch, making sure he wasn't running late. Shoto. Turn yourself in, so no one else has to die at your hands. Izuku. Hey, can we do this another time? I have a date today and I don't want to be late. Shoto growled in anger as he launched a barrage of ice spikes at Izuku, who leapt off his bike in time as the spikes stabbed into it, making it explode. Izuku sighed in disappointment as he threw 3 capsules at Shoto, who scoffed in confusion as he released a wave of fire at them. However, as the flames made contact with the capsules, they expanded, releasing a plaster-like material that consumed Shoto from the neck down. Shoto cursed at the sticky plaster and tried to cool it down with his ice, but the plaster instead began to constrict around Shoto, making him have trouble breathing. Izuku sighed as he stood up and dusted off his clothes. Izuku. Hyperpolymer. A plaster-like gel that expands when introduced to heat and contracts when introduced to cold. Created to deal with fire or ice-based quirks, the perfect counter to Shoto, the number 3 hero of Japan. Well, see you later. Izuku made his escape as Shoto tried to escape the material with little progress. Izuku made it in time, ditching his outfit into a backpack, and was now in normal clothes. He walked into the small Italian restaurant and waved as he saw Fuyumi already at a table. He quickly walked over and gave her a friendly hug, which she returned, and he sat down with her. Izuku. Sorry about that. Hope I didn't make you wait long. Fuyumi. No, you're good, I just got sat down. Izuku. So, how was your day? Fuyumi. Well, the rest of the dinner was nice and pleasant, something Izuku hadn't been able to truly experience in a long time. He was used to his life being fast-paced and him having to always be on guard or ready for the next attack or mission. Yet, he couldn't help but wish for this date to go by a little slower. He didn't know why he felt so comfortable around her, but for some reason, it just felt right. Maybe it was because he was romantically starved, but at the moment that didn't matter. He just didn't want this night to end, and then it did. Izuku found himself hand in hand with Fuyumi walking her home, both laughing at some joke. Was this what he was missing? What he missed out on for so many years due to the heads? Sure, he had physical relations before, especially with clients or Zumi's mother, but that always just felt like business. This felt so real, like a missing piece that was lost in a puzzle for so long. They both stopped as they reached her front door and smiled gently at each other, with Fuyumi then looking down, fiddling with his scarred hand, a memento from a life he truly didn't live. Fuyumi. Tonight was fun. Izuku. That it was. Fuyumi. Well, I look forward to more. Fuyumi went on her tiptoes and gave Izuku a kiss on the cheek before backing away from him with a teasing smile. Izuku just smirked as he rubbed the back of his neck in slight embarrassment. Izuku. Of course. Fuyumi went inside, leaving Izuku out in the night before he turned around and began his walk home. He touched his cheek while boarding the train and couldn't help it when a small smile crossed his face. Izuku. Maybe this isn't so bad. Narrator Pav. Bang. Izuku took his eye off the scope of his rifle and smiled as he hit his target right in the chest. He cocked the bolt back, letting the shell fall to the pavement floor. He turned around and gave a reassuring smile to his partner. Izuku. See, it's not hard, it just takes practice. Fuyumi. I guess you're right. We zoom out now to show the two were at a shooting range with Fuyumi cradling a rifle in her arms as she watched Izuku show her proper form. Currently, they were on a date where they would show each other their hobbies. Earlier this morning it was Fuyumi's, which was a soap opera that Izuku hates to admit he got a little too into. Now they were at the gun range, which was Izuku's hobby. Izuku. Okay, let's see you try. Come here. Fuyumi giggled as she stood next to Izuku and began to aim. Izuku adjusted her aim along with her form, making her blush from the closeness, while Izuku just held a smirk. Fuyumi scoffed before refocusing on the target. Izuku. There you go. Now take a deep breath and hold it for 3 seconds, and when you release your breath, fire. Fuyumi followed his advice and at the release fired her gun. Bang! A body dropped to the floor. Izuku hoisted his smoking gun as he began searching through the office. Currently, he was in the office of one of many corrupt politicians in Japan, and almost always they held the names of fellow corrupt politicians. And behold, a file with just that in the guy's drawer, and the computer dinged as well, showing his hack was done. He looked over the names, crossing out any doubles before making his count. He was just going to hunt down the normal government corruption. He'll handle the Hero Association and Safety Commission another day. From this list alone there were 30 names, and taking into account that these names might produce more names, there was no telling how long this would take or how deep in the rabbit hole he would go, but at least it was home. Izuku and Fuyumi were hand in hand while walking around an aquarium. One of Fuyumi's ideas for this time around were that it had been around a month since they had their dinner, and every weekend after that they would have a small date. It was the night before when he got the names, but that could wait. Today he just wanted to enjoy his time with Fuyumi. Fuyumi stopped them when they reached the shark exhibit, and she turned to him with a wide smile before beginning her onslaught. Fuyumi. Did you know? Sharks are a group of fish characterized by 5 to 7 on the sides of the, and that are not fused to the head. Modern sharks are classified within the Selachimorpha or Selachi and are the to the and kin. Some sources extend the term shark as an informal category including extinct members of cartilaginous fish with a shark-like morphology, such as shark-like chondrichthyans, such as in first appeared in the period 419–359 million years, though some fossilized chondrichthyan-like scales are as old as the 458 to 444 million years ago. The oldest confirmed modern sharks, selachimorphs, are known from the about 200 million years ago, though records of true sharks may extend back as far as that. Yes, I just used the Wikipedia article, I ain't writing all that. Izuku just stared at Fuyumi with wide eyes and agape mouth as she continued to rant about sharks for 15 long minutes. Eventually, she stopped and stared at them, before turning a deep red and looking away. She apologized for going on a teacher rant, but Izuku just laughed as he hugged her to him. Yeah, this wasn't so bad. 2 weeks later, Izuku slammed a man through a table before blasting his head off. Izuku sighed as he wiped the blood of the helmet and walked towards a terminal. That was number 15 from the original list, but since then 60 more names had been added to the list, so he was dreading to see how many more were gonna be added. Izuku quickly hacked in and found something that made him freeze. This one wasn't just corrupt, he was under a different payroll besides the government. All for one. Izuku quickly scoured through the computer looking for more, and then he found it. 50 more names completely different from what he had before, all of the important people under AFO's payroll. Izuku punched a hole in the terminal in frustration before getting up and walking out of the office. This was gonna take longer than he expected. Izuku and Fuyumi took the girls to the amusement park, and well, let's just say the two girls instantly noticed the two adults flirting for most of the trip. Which resulted in Shomi just straight up asking if she and Zumi were going to be related soon. Making the two adults blush while Zumi just held a shocked face. Izuku swung a sledgehammer down, followed closely by a loud crunch then a scream. Izuku tossed the sledgehammer aside as he began pacing around his captive, kicking the now shattered leg, making them groan again. On the seat in this backhill was Magna. Izuku found the villain by complete chance when he was returning home one night. Not wanting to miss the opportunity, he kidnapped the villain and began torturing them for information. Izuku. You know I don't really like wasting my Friday night torturing some weirdo in a garage. So, just tell me where the rest of your band is so I can go home. Magna. I told you. We haven't seen each other in years, after Shigaraki was dropped by his boss. We all went our separate ways, the only one I've seen is Toga and you already killed her. Izuku. Damn right I did. So, you're telling me that I wasted my Friday night on your ugly ass. Magna. Wait, no, I think I remember where Spinner is. Izuku. Talk. Magna. Last I heard he was a fighter in that underground fighting arena. Izuku. I see. Well, I'll make it fast since you were somewhat useful. Magna. Wait. Izuku shoved a barrel into Magna's mouth and fired, blowing their entire head off. Izuku wiped the brain matter off him and began walking away, throwing a match onto the floor, catching it on fire. No loose ends for him. Dash dash. Loud wet noises filled the old Todoroki home as Fuyumi and Izuku traded spit on the couch with a movie being played to drown them out. The girls were asleep so they didn't need to worry about them, as Fuyumi straddled him and deepened the passionate kiss. Even though they technically weren't fully dating, it didn't mean they couldn't have some fun, they were adults after all. What could interrupt this moment? The front door opened and closed, showing a middle-aged man with pure white hair. He had a smile as he brought up a small gift bag. He thought he would pay his older sister a visit along with his niece since his work was usually really busy. Hell, this was his first time visiting in months, thank God he still had a key. He rang the doorbell and no one answered. If they weren't here he'd just drop off the gift. He entered the living room and froze as he looked to the couch, seeing his sister in on top of a man. His sister seemed to have heard the front door open in the back of her mind, making her glance up, going wide-eyed while turning red. Disconnecting herself from the man but still straddling him with obvious embarrassment. Fuyumi. Natsuo. Fuyumi. After a lot of explaining and embarrassment from Fuyumi, Natsuo was able to calm down and able to be probably introduced to Izuku. It was still very awkward, especially since all the shouting woke up the girls, which brought even more problems. Dash dash. Izuku kicked a man through a wall as he began marching through a remote office building. He had finally reached the end of his list, and just his luck it was a demon head. Meaning if he went through with this there was no turning back, he would officially be on the demon head's hit list. Sure, this was one of the weaker ones, doesn't mean they weren't going to be a pain in killing. Especially due to her work, so he needed to calm himself down or he would lose. One of the 7 demon heads, Dana Zhang, the voice of the heads. She was 19 years old and despite that had established herself as one of the greatest upcoming politicians. So skilled with her wordplay that it was rumored she could convince you to kill yourself for her. She could. She was a short woman with a petite build, more Chinese features in her facial structure, and a nice set of pink hair always tied in a professional bun. Her personality to the public was of a nice woman who'll drop anything to help you, motherly you could say. In private, she was a very cold and drag person, a business-first type of person. Izuku hated when he had to work for her, usually killing her opponent or their family members. Izuku kicked down the door of the main office, finding his target, who with an uncaring face was looking over a paper. Who was across from her was what got his attention, a young man with short hair but stylized, Aoyama. The hero froze when he saw Izuku and seemed to try to put as much distance from him as possible. Dana just frowned when she saw Izuku. Dana. About time you got here. You sure did a number on my opponents and allies. Why though? Izuku. What's up with the scaredy cat? Dana. Oh him. He was just about to get under my payroll, or under the demon heads more like. By giving us information on the heroes, he'll receive protection from us in a large sum. Izuku. So, a traitor. Dana. Yep, and it seems this isn't his first time either. Izuku. Huh. Aoyama started to panic as a cruel smile crossed Dana's face. Dana. He worked for All for One during his high school years, or more specifically his freshman year. He was the one who told the league where and when Izuku Midoriya would be by himself. Isn't that funny, Hood? She drawled out the words with a smirk, getting the right reaction out of Izuku, utter rage. Izuku lunged at Aoyama, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against the wall. Aoyama's eyes held only fear as Izuku began to squeeze harder. He was the reason why everything turned out like this. The reason why he fell into this life, the reason why he died. Dana's smile turned cruel as she opened her mouth to say something. Dana. Hood. Izuku. What? Izuku's eyes under his mask glazed over with a pink hue. Dana. Stop. Let him down. Izuku dropped Aoyama with a thud, making the rat begin to claw his throat for air with hard wheezes. Izuku had messed up and fallen under Dana's quirk. Dana Jong quirk. Vocal control. She can command anyone to do anything she wants, but under one condition: emotion. If you showed or directed any emotion at her, then she can command you. It didn't matter if it was visual or proximity, it was the concept of emotion. The stronger the emotion shown, the stronger the commands can be. Example. Calm, weakest; happiness, moderate; hate or lust, strongest. Dana sat up and began walking towards Izuku, walking around him with a praising look as if admiring a statue or a fine piece of art. Dana kicked Aoyama out of the way as she stood face to face with Izuku, well more her looking up at his helmet. Dana. Ah, nice try there, Hood, but you really think I wouldn't prepare for this? You may not truly understand your own past, but that anger is still deep in that soul, which is why I brought him. It's pretty easy to get that rage ignited in you. I mean, Yai does it all the time. Well, Izuku, kill him. Not even a second later, Izuku blasted Aoyama's brains out, making him collapse to the floor. Dana. Good. Now kill yourself. No need for loose ends. Izuku brought the gun up before sticking under Dana's chin, making her eyes go wide. Izuku. You're right, no loose ends. Dana. How? Izuku. The gunshot. The vibrations and sound releases the control, but you never really investigated that. Izuku fired, blowing her head off and pushed her body off him, staring down at it. Thus marked the end of one of the 7, just 6 more to go. Izuku sighed as he released some of his anger from Aoyama. He didn't understand why he got angry there. Was she right? Were the emotions actually buried deep inside his soul? He left soon after, not wanting to think about it any longer. His 3 months ended on one high note. The declaration that he and Fuyumi were together. Maybe the last good thing that'll happen to him from now on. Narrator Pav. This chapter takes place over several months, and if you didn't know, it has been about in the story a year and a half asterisk. About a week since the last chapter's events. In a remote location, the entirety of the past Class 1A could be seen in a dark intel room, with a large printed map on the table with hollow buildings tending from it. All were marked with certain symbols on them. The tension in the room was palpable. After all, they had just learned that one of their friends was murdered last week. Now it was time to plan their revenge, to catch his killer. Bakugo. We all know who did it, correct? All. Yes, Bakugo. Then let's start planning. The arrest of the Red Hood. Thus they began working. Izuku. What the fuck do you mean I'm wrong? Fuyumi. You fucking heard me. Want me to repeat it slower so your dumbass can understand? As you can see, Izuku and Fuyumi are having their first ever argument in their 1 week-long relationship. You may be wondering why so. Was it because she found out the truth about his job? No. Maybe she thinks he's cheating on her. No. Perhaps it's her time of the month. No. Well, maybe, but no. The reason why they are arguing at the moment is Izuku. Oh, I'm a dumbass, just because I think Ronaldo is going to end up with Esmeralda. Fuyumi. Yes, because it's obvious Esmeralda is going to be with Paco. Yes, they are arguing over which male lead the main character Esmeralda from Latin Heat should end up with. How long has this been going for? 3 days. It started with just a side comment Izuku made while watching the soap opera with her. Unfortunately, it devolved into this. It continued for another 4 hours until eventually, they came to a compromise, that Fatima wasn't going to end up with anyone. Yes, engrossing plot right here, and that's what you were here for. Anyway, one more fluff before back to seriousness. Izuku stared at his phone with a dead face before looking up and seeing Zumi looking away with a very guilty look. Izuku was staring at his bank account at the moment, and well, let's just say he wasn't amused. Izuku. $4,000, on a mobile game. Zumi. There was a seasonal draw. Zumi used her girly voice and innocent look to calm Izuku down. Izuku just sighed, ruffled her hair and then began putting on his outfit. He reached the door, sent a text to Fuyumi, and turned to Zumi. Izuku. I'll be back. Fuyumi will be here to pick you up soon. No more transactions, or you're grounded. Zumi. Okay. Sorry dad, but I need that 5-star character. Izuku then left through the door. It didn't take long for Izuku to find a high-paying contract, finishing it under a day and offsetting Zumi's purchases plus more. However, he would later get scolded by Fuyumi for leaving Zumi alone. She was by herself for 5 minutes. Okay, now back to seriousness. Izuku had begun his 7th step. The hunting of the Hero Association heroes, including the fakes, are corrupted as well. This led to this one late night where Izuku could be seen standing on a roof with a pair of binoculars staring down the street, stalking the hero. This one frequented the underground fighting ring as a bettor and sometimes fighter, which means he could also lead him too. Izuku froze as he saw his secondary target trailing not far behind the hero. Izuku smiled as he put down the binoculars and pulled up a red hood. Tonight was going to be a lot quieter than his usual acts. It was easy slipping into the club, after all you didn't need much to bribe the bouncers. It was loud and crowded with dubstep pumping loudly on the dance floor, which was on a balcony that overlooked a large stadium with a caged ring in the middle. Izuku easily slipped through the crowd, reaching the railing that overlooked the ring. Down in the ring, Izuku could see Spinner fighting for his life between 2 other mutant types, one a shark and the other a tiger. Spinner was getting killed out there before he finally got knocked out of the ring through the cage onto the floor, where he was booed and the nearby fans threw food and drinks at him. Izuku backed away as Spinner was escorted into the locker room. Later, once he regained consciousness, Spinner could be seen applying bandages to himself with a scowl. Ever since the failure of the League of Villains, he'd been hopping around for all these years, stuck on this stupid island. He couldn't leave because people knew who he was. It's not like he could hide since he was a mutant type. He was essentially screwed for life. While complaining about his life, he heard the locker room door open, but he ignored it. After all, he took the fall like he was supposed to. Spinner instead felt someone grab him by the back of the neck and toss him back, making him hit the back of his head on the lockers. Spinner growled as he looked to his attacker, but fear took his body as he saw a man wearing a red hood with his face under it covered by a plain red mask. Spinner didn't have a chance to beg as Izuku slammed his foot into Spinner's chest, cracking his ribs instantly. Izuku. Where are the rest of the league? Spinner. I'll never say. Izuku. Okay. Izuku brought his foot up and slammed it back down on Spinner's neck, killing him instantly. Izuku walked out the back door. He'll just come for the hero another day. Izuku and Fuyumi could be seen cuddling on a couch in winter clothes. They were in the back patio of her home, watching Shomi and Zumi playing in the first snowfall together. Izuku smiled softly as he saw a giant grin form on Zumi's face as she tossed a snowball at Shomi. Was this what he was missing? For so long he just felt so empty with only him and Zumi, and yet before he barely saw her. Yet now he just felt so content, but not satisfied. With him obtaining this life now, he had to try even harder to accomplish his goals. Not just for Zumi, but for Fuyumi and every person they care for. Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts by Fuyumi's words. Fuyumi. I want you to meet my parents. Izuku. Huh. A woman screamed as she was slammed against an alley wall from behind. Tears began to spill from her eyes, already knowing what was about to happen to her. The hero said he wanted to speak with her and she trusted him, but now he had her against the wall with one of his hands filled with electricity as a threat to keep her still. The woman closed her eyes and accepted her fate as the man fiddled with her skirt. Bang! A loud gunshot echoed throughout the alley, followed by a hollow of pain, as the man fell to his knee while holding the other one. The woman turned down the alley and saw a hooded man walking in with a smoking gun. He gestured for her to leave, which she did, quickly leaving the 2 men by themselves. Izuku. Guillaume Hikage. Pro hero. Static, quirk, taser, can produce electricity in the palm of his hands. The head interrogator of the Hero Association and executioner of the Safety Commission. Nice to meet you. The man growled and went to lash out at Izuku, but a quick shot to the head stopped the hero in his tracks. The body fell to the floor with a thud, making Izuku sigh as he walked towards it. He dropped a holotag next to the body, forming a red bat symbol before he grappled away. Now it was truly time to start. The next day, the news was covering the murder of Static and was showing all the good he did to the community around him and Japan as a whole. Until all the channels went to popcorn before it came to the video of Static torturing a man then killing him. Then a video appears in the corner of that one, this time of Static raping a woman, and then another video overlaps in the corner of him taking bribes. Then another of him betting on underground fights. Then another of him killing a fellow hero. Like a collage, video after video overlapped each other, followed by photos of every crime Static had committed until it blacked out and then lit up again, showing the Red Hood sitting on a chair with his forearms resting on his thighs. A singular light hanging above him only illuminated him in whatever room he was in. Red Hood, I'm sorry you had to see that, but to experience the truth, you have to be prepared to be hurt. As you could have probably guessed, I am the man that killed the hero, Static, but as you also may have seen, was he a hero? Don't get me wrong, I of all people have no right to call out people for right or wrong. But I can tell when someone's a bad apple, and as you've seen, Static was a rotten apple. Now you may be wondering why all the theatrics. Well, it's to send a message. Red Hood stood up from his chair and started to pace around. Red Hood, I am going to begin hunting down every corrupt hero, or from what the villain said a long time ago, all the fakes. Yet, unlike that villain, I will say this. Not all heroes are fakes or corrupt, which is why if you are a legit hero, you have no reason to be afraid of me, but if you are. Chuckle, well, you know what's going to happen. Red Hood stopped and stared at the camera. Red Hood, the Red Hood have already done so much for Japan that you haven't even realized. All the gangs are gone and the ones that do remain are under me, so no need to fear walking out at night or during the day. Every corrupt politician is gone and buried, foreign drug trafficking and domestic gone, human trafficking strangled out of Japan, and now finally corrupt heroes will be gone as well. By my methods, but remember, you have nothing to be afraid of if you've done nothing wrong. I only punish those who need to be punished. Red Hood pointed a finger at the camera. Red Hood, all I want is to make Japan a better place, and I have. All you need to do is get out of my way. It's what Deku would have wanted, right? A perfect Japan. Each hero I kill from now on will get this same treatment, every crime they have ever committed being released to the public. No more hiding behind the limelight, no more secrets. Red Hood spoke in a sarcastic tone at the end, before the feed cut out. The TV not long after exploded into a million pieces, showing an extremely pissed off Bakugo with the rest of Class 1A all equally angry behind him. They were in their meeting room. Bakugo. He dares. Narrator Pav. Izuku dodged an acid ball by flipping over a table to take the hit, and Izuku returned fire to his attacker, hitting them with several rounds to the chest. They quickly fell to the floor dead, with their partner yelling in fury as they released a bunch of tendrils from her fingertips. Izuku just sidestepped them and fired a single round into their head, killing them. Izuku cracked his neck seeing all the destruction. These two heroes were a little more annoying than he thought. It had been about a week since he started his hunt. Izuku had already killed about 40 or so heroes. He was happy that only one of them was ranked pretty high. Most were upcomers or ones that stuck to the shadows. He dropped his calling card next to each body, and tomorrow, once their deaths get reported, he'll leak their crimes. They started to be in duos, thinking it'll save them, but it just made it easier to hunt them down. Well, he had to head out anyway. Tonight was what he dreamed of for a while now, or as long as he's been with Fuyumi. Tonight he was meeting her parents. Izuku and Fuyumi arrived at a small estate outside the city, with it having a traditional home vibe. Izuku closed his car door with a slam as he took a deep breath. He was in a winter coat while Fuyumi had on a thick fur coat he got her. Of all the things he had done, whether legal or illegal, he was certain this was going to be the hardest one yet. Fuyumi smiled at him and took his hand as she led him to the front door. Fuyumi. Okay, don't be nervous. He will try to intimidate, whether it be on purpose or accident. He is trying to improve. But, keyword trying. Izuku. It's fine, Fuyumi, after all I need to get on his good side if I want to ask for your hand. Fuyumi turned red and smacked Izuku's arm, making him laugh as he rang the doorbell. Not long after, the door opened to reveal a tall older man showing Enji Todoroki. he looked good for his age, but you could tell he was getting up there in years as most of his red hair was gone, now replaced with a dull gray, and he hunched slightly in place. However, his glare was unchanging as he scanned over Izuku, making even him slightly uncomfortable. Next Patankly, his face softened as he motioned for them to follow him. They entered the home and were taken to the living room, where an older woman was sitting with long white hair. He could tell it was her natural color. The parents of Fuyumi, and both of them together. Not long after Izuku's initial death, Endeavor became inspired by the young lad. It was slow at first, but he tried to change for his family. Fuyumi immediately accepted him, but the other two, well, it had been years since they talked. After a lot of counseling, Rei eventually gave Enji an actual chance, and they have been happily married since. This is the only reason why Izuku didn't kill Endeavor, because he grew to become better. The dinner was a little awkward at first, as all first-time meets, but it quickly grew lighthearted once Fuyumi began introducing everyone. Izuku found the parents of Fuyumi nice and straight to the point. It was a nice feeling. Something he hadn't experienced in this life. He still remembered when Mom would do stuff with him, yet like stated before, there was no emotion in his memories. So, to him, it was just a memory of a woman serving him food with a smile and sitting across from him. Yet he felt nothing for the woman nor the memory. Was he a bad person for it? He wasn't sure, but it wasn't like it mattered since he already was a bad apple. Yet that's what he felt for all the characters from his past, just characters in a movie in his head that held no emotion, just moving pictures. Izuku buried the thoughts for the 357th time and refocused on the dinner. All he could say was that this moment would be a good memory. Something he didn't get often after his rebirth. The drive back home was quiet, not in an awkward sense but more calming. The radio hummed through the silence as Izuku pulled to a red light. However, Fuyumi turned off the radio, making Izuku turn towards her in confusion. Her face was red and her eyes wouldn't meet him as she continued to look forward with the red light illuminating her face. Fuyumi, were you serious when you said you wanted to marry me? Izuku didn't look at her as he stared at the red light, it illuminating the dark path ahead. Was he truly ready for this? To finally truly open up? He'll be honest, he was just joking when he said it, but deep down he knows he wants that life. That he wants her by his side, but he is also scared that he will just bring tragedy to her due to his mission. He stared at the red light before smirking. Izuku. Ah, screw it. Izuku slammed on the accelerator, going through the red light, making Fuyumi yelp as she held on the overhead handle. Fuyumi. Izuku. Izuku. Of course, I want to marry you, Fuyumi. I love you. Fuyumi froze for a second as her face fully flushed but continued to look away. Fuyumi. Why though? I'm way older than you. I'm sure you would have no problem finding someone closer to your age. Izuku. I like them mature and well, a few years never hurt anyone. Fuyumi flushed even more. Fuyumi. Well, I'm not the prettiest. Izuku. You're right, you're gorgeous. Fuyumi was a tomato. Fuyumi. But Izuku. Fuyumi. There is nothing that can change my mind. There was a silence that filled the car before something spoke out that almost made Izuku swerve off the road. Fuyumi. You know, I don't think Zumi will mind if she gets to spend the night with Shomi. I'm sure my brother and sister-in-law can handle them. Izuku immediately turned a different way to his apartment instead. Who was he to deny his lovely girlfriend? I mean, surely Zumi would understand her dad also had needs. ***. 1 week later, Izuku sat in an abandoned apartment room adjusting his scope onto the target, which was a safety commission hero. The scope was aligned on the target's chest, but Izuku had a weird feeling someone was watching him. He pulled back the cock and felt a shift in the wind behind him. He immediately whirled around while pulling out his handgun, but nothing was there. He stood up and looked around the room with narrowed eyes. He was about to put away his gun until something grabbed him by the wrist and whacked him across the face. In his momentary confusion, he was thrown through the door out into the hallway. Izuku, stunned by the surprise attack, took a moment to get up, allowing the hero to call for backup and disassemble the gun into pieces. Toru. Hood in apartment building C, 5th floor. Toru then muttered an ow as she flexed her knuckles. Izuku. Shit, an ambush. Izuku stood up, pulling out his backup handgun while activating a thermal in his helmet. He was about to fire at the now visible Toru. However, Toru immediately used her blinding attack, making Izuku grunt in pain from the thermal going haywire. Toru dodged to the side as Izuku fired wildly until a large tail wrapped around Izuku's wrist, flipped him around, and tossed him down the hall. Izuku staggered back up, allowing Ojiro to dropkick Izuku out of the building, through the wall and another wall into a different building. Izuku groaned as he struggled to get up. He had lost his second pair in the throw, so he was down to his backups. Izuku popped his shoulder back into place as he began to walk down the hallway for a better position. Ojiro landed at the end of the hallway through the hole in the wall. He didn't see Toru, but he knew she was there. He activated the enhanced hearing feature in the helmet as he fell into a fighting stance. They didn't need to know about his backup guns. Let them think he's unarmed. However, Ojiro didn't rush forward. Instead, he crouched down and covered his ear, confusing Izuku. Until a loud screech through the hallway, making Izuku yell in pain as his ears began to bleed. The screeching stopped, stunning Izuku enough for Ojiro to rush in and hit him with a nasty combo that indented him into the wall. Jiro. That was for Aoyama. Izuku. Really? All this for that traitor? Oh. Wait. I knew I had forgotten something. Forgot to post the evidence for him. Momo. What are you talking about? Izuku looked up and saw Momo walking up the stairs with a scowl before stopping in front of him. He was sitting against the wall with Ojiro and Toru standing in front of him, while Jiro still maintained her distance. Shouldn't be too hard to win this one. Izuku. Aoyama was the UA traitor. He sold you out to the love for the USJ and the forest incident, all to save his ass. He was also the reason Izuku Midoriya was captured and eventually murdered. How do you think the love knew exactly when he'd be alone or that he'd be off his guard? He was the reason Izuku died that day. Momo. You're lying. Izuku laughed at that as he could see the denial in all their faces, but he could see the gears begin to turn in their heads. Izuku. Huh. Well, it's not like it matters if you believe me or not. I'll post the evidence once I'm done here. Momo. You won't be leaving here. Izuku. Oh, you gonna kill me? Momo. No, but you will taught a lesson for what you've done and for sullying our friend's memory. Momo created a metal bat and was about to swing down until Izuku sprung up, dodging the swing and clocking her right in the jaw. Momo was stunned but blocked the second punch with the bat, but still knocked her back. Momo. Formation W. Ojiro and Toru went to attack him, but Izuku dropped a smoke bomb that filled the hallway. Stunned by it, the heroes stood in confusion, allowing Izuku to dash towards the unsuspecting Jiro. He appeared in front of her in seconds, making her growl as she sent her jacks to attack him, but he just avoided them and clapped her ears, stunning her. In her stunned stand, Izuku grabbed her jacks and forcibly stabbed them into the nearby wall. He then raised his fist, making the gauntlet gun activate, and punched the wall. That hurt her, but the next action made it worse as the gauntlet fired into the wall, making Jiro scream as her ears bled. Izuku socked her in the face, knocking her out. Ojiro came up behind and swung his tail down to hit Izuku, but Izuku sidestepped and grabbed Ojiro by the neck with both his hands. He then slammed Ojiro through a wall, and while he was down, stunned Izuku curb stomped his face, knocking him out. Toru tried to sneak up on him, but Izuku tossed a canister in her direction that exploded into white paste, revealing her form, allowing Izuku to hook her in the face, knocking her out. Then it was just Izuku and Momo left. Izuku. Well, that was disappointing, but what can I expect from a bunch of C-listers, and that just leaves the wife of a top tier. Don't disappoint. Momo growled as she formed a bow staff and charged at Izuku, who fell into a stance. Izuku dodged the first few swings with ease, already seeing Momo begin to panic, which meant she still had those deep thoughts in the back of her mind. Honestly, he was expecting more from her, but he couldn't waste any more time. Izuku punched forward, making Momo put the staff up to block, but Izuku shattered it with ease, landing a solid punch to her face and knocking her to the ground. Izuku stood over her and just looked at her fear-stricken face. Izuku. Still smart as ever, Yaomomo. Yet you still have that nasty habit of panicking when your plan falls apart. Tell Scarface I said hi. Izuku dropped a smoke bomb and escaped into the day. Maybe he'll try again another day. Momo lay there defeated, and all she could think about was if it were true about Aoyama. Did he betray all of them? Betrayed Izuku? To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.